Oh, there it is. I was like, when is it going to show it live? But here we are, starting 5 minutes early, as if that makes much of a difference. We're finishing this tonight. John dies tonight. We don't really have much of a catch me up because we're in the middle of the last chapter. And all we really have left are the last chapter and the epilogue, but it is a whole 15, well, it's a whole 17%, really. But we'll see. We're getting there, though. We got majority of this is going to be the epilogue. I think the major vote was a long prologue last week. And hey, Bobby, what's up? Welcome. I can imagine. I know that I've read books that don't even have an epilogue, but it has like 4 or 5 chapters after the climax that are just like, why is this not over yet? I don't care about your slice of life. Where are they now? There's not. Anyway. All that we have for our synopsis is our name is David Wong, hashtag alias. We were transported to another dimension of naked old men. That's right. There were the naked guys. Lots of PPs mentioned. John is making a dog diarrhea a bomb on the bad cult guy who wants to hive mind everybody, which is a worse version of the loin mind times 10 million percent. That's right. The loin mind is where you actually want to be. Nah, you're good, Dukeman. That's typically how it actually happens. And also, I stopped remembering books until I started taking a lot of notes. But also, you're fine. Like, you're not the only one that picked it. This book was voted for, and we're experiencing it together. But you're good. You don't have anything to be sorry about. I don't want you to feel sorry about nothing. We live, we experience together. Also, hey, it's been such a long time. I hope you're doing all right. You started on book 3. You know, I was looking up stuff on this book, and I saw other people that started at like book 2 or book 3. So that's not, was also from the titles. I wouldn't have guessed which one came first either. Hey, Vanya, welcome. Let us just have a good night, okay? I have been sad today. Technically, I've been sad all week, but let's just try to have a good time and not feel bad about anything. I see burritos. I would be interested in hearing what the second and third books are like, Dukeman. John had a plan. If he is to be believed, while I was being hauled into a room with Amy, the 4 beastmints holding John tried to keep him still as he proclaimed seizures and thrashed his limbs out. Every time it mentions him faking seizures, it just makes me think of, especially because of the type of humor that's in this book, it makes me wonder if it's a reference to anything specifically. And clearly, I'm gonna think of Jeffrey Dahmer, who pretended to have cerebral palsy in high school because it made other kids laugh, and he was just trying to be liked. And so he was copying his mom's friend who had cerebral palsy. And that explains the juvenile humor could be chalked up to being unconfident in his writing. It could be. I don't know what the rest of his books are like, but that's also why I give a lot of writers multiple, like more than one book to see what their style is and to compare, because it can be really hard to get a sense of how an author is from one book. But it's definitely ambitious, and it fits, as far as I've seen, into the bizarro genre. And I have read a good handful of bizarro, and obviously people who like bizarro, especially, I mean, even the pee pee humor and the poo poo humor, Lots of it in Bizarro. I wonder if he was fresh out of college. Did he go to college for writing for this? We read some weird stuff in college, and partially because of other college kids' recommendations. Hello Kitty Must Die, I heard about in college because one of the fifth terms, during her fifth term seminar, did a book report on Hello Kitty Must Die, and the way that she presented, I was like, I have to read this. And that was about the chick that wanted to get her hymen re-put in. So she, no, wanted to break her own hymen to get rid of her virginity and then fell in love with the one guy. I don't. It was just a weird book. But, anyways, it makes me wonder. Also, oh, I brought up college because also AWP. I wonder if he goes to AWP. Has a lot of Bizarro books as well. Grumble! I was going to start like 15 minutes early to give us extra time for the last part of this book. But then I was just drinking coffee instead and only started 5. He did a stint for a while at crack.com. That makes sense. And he transferred to novel writing. Well, I hope he obviously had some great success because his book got turned into a movie. Hey, Q-Limp, what's up? But please, don't ever, I don't want anyone to ever feel sorry for what they vote for, at least not sincerely, because I think at some point Toasty was like, I'm sorry for the turtle book. Nah, fam, nah. We're just here together. Anyways, seizure. I'm seizuring here. I like seizing better, but it's okay. This caused a commotion up in, when you're in a room full of old men screaming about a seizure, you got. Also, Dukeman, I'm reading a book right now where there were some gay raccoons in it, and one of them had rabies and then died of rabies, and I had to sit there and question if it was an AIDS allegory. I think you're okay. You will make multiple accounts for Skyshade. You mean you're going to vote for Skyshade? Is that what you're saying? Did you submit Skyshade to the Loin stream? It's cool, imp. That makes sense. Look, I just read poorly. Despite reading so much. I had somebody say how weird it was that when I'm reading, I like get odd words first try, but like really simple words I pronounce in a bizarre way. And I'm like, I don't know what to tell you other than I'm homeschooled and yeah, pretty much that. I don't have a lot of interaction. The third was about letting go. That's not a bad theme. There's more focus on themes. Writing is a learning process. That's also why, like, if I like somebody's writing style, like, Lauren Chambers is an example for me because I really like his ideas. And when I'm reading his books, I'm really intrigued. But obviously, like, from the ways that I've talked about the books, I see things in the stories that weren't quite connected together. But I really like the way that he thinks. And I like where I can see, like, where his brain goes. And I like the style of his writing. I'm just watching you learn how to write right now. And that's kind of, I mean, that's, I think, sometimes a fun thing to watch if you like a writer. And it's also just difficult. But also why you can't just be like, you wrote a crappy book, you're always going to be crappy. Everybody who writes will have a book that's worse than the other books. Where it falls in your career, I don't know. Stephen King has a lot of them because Stephen King has so many stories. It's okay. You will hack into your account. You don't have to hack into my account. You can just submit it. The fourth was about family trauma and addiction. Well, I would love to hear about the different stories and how they kind of play out. What you remember, at least. I can't have a full conversation in this because we got to read the book. But I would love to hear about the other ones and see how it evolved from John dies at the end. How I said, was it a Russian one? Because I saw somebody making fun of me saying a Russian name in a recent video. I think it was when I was looking at comments in Stigma Plays video. Who stole your place? Uh-oh. you put one into the summer reading collection by accident, you could just DM me what the name of it was and I can go and check. David took your place. You all have 75 points. You have the same XP. It was like Ashley or something. That's fair. Also, David! In case I didn't say, hey, David, what's up? I feel like I did, but I want to make sure I didn't miss you. Anyways, we're seizing. We're vibing and we're seizing. This caused a commotion up in the observation deck, with the observers not sure what to do with Large Man gone and the trans-dimensional visitor festival spinning quickly out of control. Molly began whining in earnest at that moment, quivering all over. John knew that both the General Valdez excellent microwave burrito was about to make a reappearance. A door opened and an emergency crew rushed in, 4 hooded women, each carrying a kitten in each hand. More people filed into the room behind them. Didn't he kick a kitten last time? That's why we turned on freaking David. That's what. That's, yeah. Yeah, they gave him a comfort kitten and then he, like, punched it. We don't stand animal abusers. And and John figured that they were in the observation deck and were using this as an excuse to get a closer look. These people seemed to have some authority, and with a gesture of their hands, the 4 inhuman guards let go of John's arms. He fell to the floor, and immediately the girls piled their kittens on his body and fussed over him. Would that disarm you guys? If somebody just put a bunch of kittens on you? Was probably made in a test tube. It still has does a test tube kitten still have feelings? That is the question. I would say yes. I agree, Grumble. I must have my medicines, bro. John shout. I hope you guys know that I've added like dude and man and bro to John's dialogue just because it feels right. Hey, cream of the crop, what's up? You'd conquer the world with the test tube kittens? Yes. Dude. When I was speaking of hurting kittens, this looks deeper than it is, but when I was at the pet store last weekend, and they had those little incubator kittens, that's what they had called them because they were still so young. They were on the bottle and they were only like this big, and they said that they had just plucked those out of a kill shelter because they were on the euthanasia list. And I'm like, what kind of psychopath can actually do a job of killing kittens, like legitimately just killing kittens? Who could be like, I'll get paid for that? Perfectly healthy kittens at that. Just, I can't even imagine. I would hate myself. I would be in there with the job in the shelter, just like sneaking kittens out. PETA? I am not a Petan either. But yeah, PETA's terrible. I just, okay. I said happy things. We're doing happy things now. John shouted to a small pale man who he guessed was Asian. How do we know that he's guessing he's Asian? Neither the man nor anyone else seemed to know what John was saying. My medicine, my seizure medicine, dude! John reached into his pocket, and several of the onlookers jumped back. John pulled out his tobacco and cigarette paper and held them up to show them that they were not weapons. The group stood and watched in fascination as John sat and brushed the kittens aside. He gathered all of his concentration and went about rolling the one perfect cigarette, the most perfect cigarette that could save our universe. We're gonna put some oregano in that, so not only does it smell like nicotine, but it also smells like a pizza. Imagine that's how you get people really addicted. You smoke a cigarette. Oh yeah, you know what? Cream, I know you. it's time you got modded. Thank you. Imagine that's anyway, I was saying to smoke a cigarette and it smells like pizza. That's how you do. coming out of the pet shelter with suspiciously kitten-shaped bumps under the hood. Yes, absolutely. You want to... Yes. Your friend's dad drowned some kittens? Oh my gosh. How does anybody say that? The movie bombed? Dang. I was gonna say, didn't I see somebody recently talking about this? But no, they were talking about the John Carter movie. He spread the tobacco, wound up with a cone-shaped tobacco horn that had John cursing in frustration. He tried a second time, almost got it, and then finally a third. Perfect. You enjoyed that. Well, see, look, we got a cool and cool imp you've been around too. You get to be brought in. Don't abuse the power. You get the wrench because I trust you. He glanced at Molly and nodded. Then, with a squeal and a sound like a hard rainfall, Molly let go. A spray of shit ejected from her hindquarters, and in it was a lump that John instantly recognized as half of a dog bone that went undigested since it was an unstable, ultra-high explosive compound instead of the antlers and fermented cow fur that actual dog biscuits are made of. John lit his perfect cigarette, took a puff, and nodded, his thanks to the group. John leapt to his feet. He held out his hands to the group of humans and the four monstrosities in the room, and he said, "Everybody get back, bros!" And he went to the puddle of feces, grimaced as he fished out the soggy chunk of explosive dog biscuits, and he used his pinky finger to dig out the small dent in the half bone, then lodged the unlit end of his cigarette into it. He set the smoking apparatus onto a dry piece of the floor, stood, checked his watch, and then looked over at the thin yellow-brown stream that was leaking from the dog. "Molly, it's time to say bye-bye." John picked up the shitting dog, holding her across his chest with both arms, her paws dangling. He sprinted out of the room, screaming, "Get out! Everyone get out, dudes! It's gonna blow!" John hefted the dog down the hall, came to the first closed door that he could find, and he saw no handle on the door and no buttons or controls, and he screamed, "Open, you fuck!" And then the door slid obediently open. John saw a large man and saw a room imprisoning Amy and saw me looking outraged and decided that it was best to turn Molly's ass toward the large man and hope that she shat on him. She did. I threw my hands in front of my face as warm shit splattered in a wide stream across the room and the dog let out an agonized yelp. Large man was surprised by this turn of events and threw himself to the ground. John let Molly go, pulled on his Zippo from his pocket, lit it, and flung it at one of the beastments. The lighter smacked it in the head with a flare of yellow and blue, the thing letting out a howl. John then ran over and administered a hard kick to large man's ribs. In a blur, the two basements were beastments were on him, large man, telling them not to kill him. Everything was under control. As if to specifically contradict this assertion, I noticed a lump of fairly solid feces on the floor, from which emerged another cracked piece of our dog biscuit bomb. I grabbed it in my hand, ran and dove and snatched John's lighter from the floor. I saw the group from the hall pushing in through the door now, including the four beastments that were tossing a naked people outside and imposing themselves into the room. I helped. Can you imagine being naked in this situation? This turn of events. You're right, David. Has a surreal feel at some point. This whole thing is surreal. This whole thing is like a dream. You're not that guy. That's okay, Cream. It seems like generally. What in God's name is this? It seems like generally when the chat is full of mods, strangers that wander in behave themselves. Imagine that. But pretty much the middle. It's wild. It's, it's fair. Considering the experiences I've had with books that I have read and then completely forgot and then read again, I 100% understand just not even remembering. And then I write notes, and then I go through my notes, and I'm like, oh yeah, that did happen, didn't it? It's like walking into a police station looking sussy. We threw us. Hmm. Where was I? Did I just turn the page? I feel like I had to have just turned the page. I held up the dog turd and flicked the lighter, the flame dancing an inch away from the explosive excrement. There's enough explosives in this poop to collapse this whole cave. Now back the fuck off. Whatever basic English these people knew apparently didn't include those two phrases. Nobody moved for a long time, and the only sound was the wet, farty mechanism of Molly's digestive system. Now, Large Man understood perfectly. He stumbled to his feet and nodded to the beastments in the door. It occurred to me for the first time that these people here communicated with a sort of telepathy. I would have to make some time later to be fascinated by that. At his inaudible instructions, the room was cleared and the door was shut. Only John and I and Molly were left, only with the large man. I turned to Amy, who was looking at us with eyes squinted in a sort of disgusted, accident scene curiosity, and I said, "Get back! Back against the wall!" John and I didn't need to discuss the plan. We got to the floor, dug out a hunk of dog bone from the poo, and we made maybe a quarter size of the bone. We had maybe a quarter size of the bone. And we used John's car keys to chip off the tiny hunk the size of the grain of rice. We used some of the dog poo to stick the shards of the shard to the glass, about 2 inches off the floor. John lit the Zippo, leaned it against the glass so that the flame licked the smear of feces. We threw ourselves to the far end of the room and covered our heads. The sound was massive, a sharp pock that was like nails in the eardrums. There was no sound to shattering glass, and I was afraid that it had failed. I rose and saw it in the clearing smoke, that the large puckered hole that had formed in the clear wall like a hole punched in taffy. Amy ran out, and I threw my arms around her. She said, "Where are we? I don't know how." "Later." I turned to Large Man. "If you can't cure her, then you gotta get us out of here. Get us back to our world. We'll find a way." "Gladly. We haven't long before she hatches," I said. "And let me guess, if she dies, these things are gonna come out of her right away, right?" He didn't reply, but I knew that I was right. "Okay, so you got some serious motivation to keep us safe, right? Now we get us the fuck out of here." John said, "You better hurry too, bro." "Monty, how are you feeling?" Well, it said puckered hole in the wall, and I was expecting it to be akin to a butthole. You also picked up Robert Crace books that you read but forgot about. And literal deja vu. Deja vu is wild. Two rooms away, an inch of ash fell from the rolled cigarette, crammed into a poo-smeared dog biscuit. A faint ember of orange light smoldered away of the remaining inches. "No, Monty, don't be back at the hospital." Chatillery would be. "I'm glad that you're feeling better." John said to me, "We have." He thought for a moment. "5 minutes, dude. 13 seconds before biscuit time." I set my watch. I couldn't find the countdown feature. Managed to change the date and the time zone both before I got it set, then had to adjust for the time lost. 4:48. We burst out the door, me with my arm around Large Man's neck, holding the lighter to his cheek. Nobody moved, or I'll light this fucking face, his fucking face on fire. I meant it too. Either they took this threat seriously, or Large Man was giving them instructions to back off. We pushed them down the hall, and he pointed us to the elevator. 412. We climbed inside. Another giant spider, much to Amy's horror, and took an agonizingly long, slow ride down. Amy was having trouble standing, squeezing her eyes shut, and wrapping her arms around her gut. Something's growing inside there. Down and down and down. These people built their skyscrapers upside down. 132. Finally, it stopped. We emerged in a round, tube-like hallway, and we passed through one thick round door after another. 58. We entered an enormous chamber, organic machines and clear tubes and huge egg-shaped pods that thrummed with power. I barely noticed any of it. What caught my mention was an enormous creature in the center of the room, shaped something like a huge elephant-sized toad. It squatted in the center of the room, and at the soundless command of large man, it opened its enormous mouth wide. Blackness. Inside this creature was the same swirling darkness that we saw in the dark column of the mall complex, and I squinted, and with concentration I could see the light, shapes, a room, a moving figure. 336. Large man stepped aside and pointed us towards its mouth. Go. Now. Oh no, Cool Imp. No! I said, where does it go? I mean, specifically, where will we come out? Theoretically, you should not emerge far from where you went in, but it is difficult to predict. Amy survived going through. She'll survive going back? No answer. I stepped up to the dark portal, and as I got closer, I realized that I could see faintly through it. There did seem to be a small room on the other side, barely visible, and I held my breath and stepped into the mouth of the beast, felt again that disconnected, lost time feeling of an unexpected nap. I was pitched forward and landed on a hard wood floor. I looked up and saw that I was in a hallway, turned and saw an open doorway with a VNV Nation poster on it. I stood and realized that I was looking through the Irish elevator door in the Sullivan house, only instead of the open air, I was looking at a toad room that I had just come from. The door stood open next to me, as if it had been flung open when I fell in. 22. Molly leapt through and trotted past me. John pushed Amy through, and she tumbled onto the floor and instantly went into the fetal position, face twisted in pain. There was a commotion on the other side of the room now, and I could see a dozen of the beastmints in there, wreaking havoc. There was a crowd of naked humanity. As word seemed to have spread that things were about to go terribly wrong. Largemen had a hold of John, as they had apparently either changed their minds or had decided to keep him as a souvenir. Look, he's an indie rock star. Of course, they're gonna keep him as a souvenir. There was a struggle of flailing arms and kicking feet, and John grabbed Largeman's face and came away with a leathery bundle. The man's mask. Okay, question. I should take a poll. Okay, you're being challenged to a fight. Fight of equal strength. Because I'm just going to level the playing field and say, like, they're not obviously going to wipe the floor with you. We're going to consider it equal strength, regardless of how you look. You'll use your Texas voice to dominate. It would. I could see that. Whoever. Everybody is saying yes. You're just gonna grab the naked man. You would be down for just throwing down the naked. Nobody would be hesitant to get bodily with a naked person. Hey, a San Antonian. You can discuss amongst yourselves what you get. You get to live, okay? This is a life or death situation, and you are naked and greased up. There you go. His balls are exposed. They will touch you while you're fighting, okay? What did I say the testicles were last time? I don't even remember. John froze. The man's back was to me so that I could see what John saw. But the look in John's eyes was a sort of sudden blankness. He didn't scream or puke or react at all. It was like his brain suddenly crashed like windows, and I heard footsteps in the hall of the Sullivan house. I spun and saw Robert North jogging toward me from the stairwell, wearing a long, tan woman's overcoat and an enormous feathery hat. Hey, I shouted. We made it. She's sick. She has... Look, get me some cross or holy water, or get a Jesus picture, the Jesus picture. We'll rub it on her. 11 seconds. I I turned and saw the man had snatched the mask from John's hand and was sticking it back to his face. I opened my mouth to scream at John and then wondered if sound would even travel through the rift. Then that question was answered when 0 seconds, a deep, heavy thwomp like a sonic boom hammered the world on the other side of the door, and the crowd in the room flew into a frenzy, and John kicked his way to his feet and ran in my direction. He threw himself through, fell into the hallway. I went to close the door, but North calmly strode over. He reached out a hand and stopped the door and looked in at Largeman. The two stared at each other across worlds, and the man on the other side mouthed something that seemed like a bitter insult, though I couldn't hear it, and I knew neither of these men. The meaning was clear. I should have known that you were behind this. Amy's skin was bulging and swelling in places, and I grabbed her hand and wrapped an arm around her neck and pulled her in close, whispered that it was going to be okay, that we would get her fixed right up, that bang. There was suddenly warm blood all over me. A ragged hole appeared in Amy's temple, and she went limp in my arms. Standing a few feet away was North. He was holding a little silver gun, a woman's gun. A thread of smoke drifting from the barrel. Look, are we gonna ever get closure on who was in the tarp that was in David's barn? Cover yourself in rough side view of Velcro that they have no chance. That's metal. That's metal cream. You confused by this question. What? It's a major plot point. See, I remember it explains everything. I assume it's gonna get there because it like he had it in the. Is it going to be in the epilogue? Because like he had it in the thing and then he never went back to it. Or you'll just go, huh? I am pretty dumb, so I could just go, huh? You're in 7th place. Also, welcome, Sam and Jimothy. So the question is, only one of you is going to lose to a naked man, is if you were set up, you're both naked, yes. It's just, the question is just to see if there would be hesitation to, like, engage in the fight if your sparring partner is naked. That's mostly what the question is. If you were getting jumped on by a naked person, or rather in this case, just a naked man, would you fight them with the same velocity in which you would fight them if they were not naked? Or does the nakedness make fighting awkward? And it's like... You'll use the Texan accent to dominate him. They'll speak and they'll be like, oh no, Monty gonna kick my booty. Everything inside of my head turned black as deep space. I was like, I said hi to James, right? I was like, hi James, hi Sam, but I have to make sure. You know what the Kirkpatrick family motto is? The clan, I should say clan motto, because it's the clan. The Scottish clan. Not like the white hooded clan. I just saw that, sat there. Shirt and arms flecked with red. Just looking at her slack face, her mouth hanging open. I do know from future, because I looked it up while I was looking up other stuff, that Amy dates David in the future. At least that's what I've heard. And suddenly her body was being pulled away from my arms, and North was pulling her, dragging Amy by her feet like a rag doll. What if this Amy is the one that's in the tarp and the other Amy is alive? John stood there. He's just fucking stood there while this happened, and I found I had no strength to stand. North wrestled with Amy's body and threw the legs in the doorway, and then came around and lifted the shoulders and pushed them through. The crowd in the other world, in the Toad Room, seemed completely confused by this. A dead body forcing its own way through the portal. But Largeman got it and screamed. He screamed so loud that I could hear it on the other side, and soon the people around him understood, and bedlam ensued. It was too late. Amy's body ruptured, spilling out of the cloud of a swirling white insect. The flying parasites saw a room full of hosts and poured forth into the naked crowd. Oh no. It's the... What is it? The gay... The gay thoughts demons. But if it's consensually agreed on, that's fair. Because then you're like not being surprised by it. Well, in this case, so this question was brought up by this book. Were they. This question shook you. Sorry, this is what you came into. It's just all of the dudes on this other plane were naked, and so then John was getting assaulted by all of these naked old guys. And I was like, if you're getting rammed by a bunch of naked old people all of a sudden, I don't think I could not be shook at randomly getting charged by a naked man. I'm gonna be honest. I also can't fight. Like, I don't have a violent bone in my body. I would be screwed. It was too late. Amy's body ruptured, spilling out a cloud of swirling white insects. The fly-in parasites saw a room full of hosts and poured forth into a naked crowd. A stampede ensued. The rest of Amy's body exploded, bits of blood and bone flying back into the hallway, and I heard a metallic tinkling, tinkling, tick. I think you're right, James. who is more who who is more willing to go for the low blow? Did he shower first? That is a good question. Does that mean you win if you don't have one? Oh, I feel like the more questions we ask, the more uncomfortable this question gets. I heard a metallic tinkling sound like a coin hitting the floor just as North slammed the door shut. He opened it again and saw only the undisclosed night sky and a downpour of snow. I started to stand, but North spun and put the pistol on me. I know what you are thinking, he said, and you're wrong. He started to say something else, but at that moment, John came up behind him and punched him in the kidneys. North arched his back, and suddenly I saw the metallic object that I had heard hit the floor. It was a shiny, curved bit of steel flecked with red, something a surgeon would use to brace a broken spine, and I picked up a piece of metal and then jabbed it into the wrist of North's gun hand. I felt it go in, punching through skin and popping between the two bones of his arms. North shrieked and the gun clattered to the floor, and I grabbed the gun, pointed it at North's heart, and watched him melt. Literally, he fell into a puddle of goo from... Dude, he's a toon. Dude is a toon. No balls, no fall. You know, like in Roger Rabbit, where the guy just melted when he touched the goo. Well, all of the tunes melted when they touched the goo. I used to love that movie as a kid, but it was never on TV, and we didn't have it because there were swear words in it. It's the dip. They don't do enough of the 2D live action stuff. I love that. Anyways, I picked up the piece of metal and jabbed it into the wrist of North's gun hand. I felt it go in, punching through the skin and popping between the two bones of his forearm. North shrieked and the gun clattered to the floor. I grabbed the gun, pointed it at North's heart, and watched him melt. Literally. He fell into a puddle of goo, and from it emerged a creature not unlike a jellyfish. Is this the jellyfish that was in the room? A man o' war, actually. It floated up, just as we had seen it do a couple of days ago. I squeezed the trigger and sent a shot after shot into the thing. Chips of wood flecking off the walls. The jellyfish barely noticed. It floated downstairs and Molly ran, barking after it. We never saw it again. There was a puddle of marbled goo on the floor that seemed to be streaming, dissolving. North's leftovers. I took a step forward and yanked open the door just as North had. A blast of cold air and dusting of snow blew in, and Sullivan's backyard lay 10 feet below. I was amazed that there was still light outside. The whole thing had only taken an hour or so. I sat down on the hardwood floor, sticky dots of blood drying on my face, snowflakes melting on my knees, and I couldn't think of a single reason to ever stand up again. We went out to my truck and then remembered that my truck was not at this house, but was at the mall about a mile away. I also had lost my keys at some point, but couldn't remember when. We set out, wading through the storm, not sure if a person could walk that far in ankle-deep snow without getting frostbite. Well, it depends on the temperature. Yes, you can walk that far in ankle-deep snow if you've got the right clothing on, and also depending the temperature, which if it's snowing, it's not below 0. We didn't care. We plowed through it, not talking. The afternoon was fast fading to evening, and what would happen after dark fell and the shadows grew, we didn't know. A few minutes later into our trip, during which we made depressingly little progress and lost feeling in all 20 of our toes. Look, ankle deep is not that deep. A pickup came grinding behind us, pulling over just ahead. The driver leaned out, a young guy with a red baseball cap. Though it also questioned, is it wet snow or dry snow? It is in Texas? Fair. Fair. The guy had bucket seats, so John climbed into the bed and rode it out back there. I asked the guy if he was going by the old mall, and he said he wasn't, and I asked him if he was going south close to the neighborhood, and he said he was. I looked around for Molly, saw that she hadn't followed us, and climbed in. We drove. This is some snowy shit, yo, he said. He had a little triangle of hair under his bottom lip, a soul patch, they call it. I said, yup, it's hella slick driving in this shit. I'm swerving and getting stuck here and there. All of the drivers be hating on me. I stared at the man. Are you Fred Durst of the band Limp Bizkit? He smirked and concentrated on the road. Eventually, he said, getting hella dark out there. I'm thinking you two don't want to be around when it gets fully dark, yo. Things be moving and sucking and hating on everything. Sucking and hating. You see, Dave and John are losers. That's kind of obvious. They over on sauce. You guys are very confident in your abilities to fight a naked man. Look, I'm going to say I'm impressed. There's only one other person along with me who would be like, no, I would not win. I said, and you're saying that you're not one of them? I glanced in the rearview mirror at John, huddled against the wind in the truck bed. gauged whether or not I could get the wheel away from this guy and shove him out if he should try to eat me or whatever. Fred Durst said, "Well, I ain't Fred Durst. You'll see what you want to see. If John were in here, he'd see somebody else. But the point is, there's darkness, yeah, and there's light, and it's all a balance, like them yin-yang fishes forever biting each other's tails. You know how it be." I studied his blue eyes and said, "Why don't you tell me who you really are before I punch you in the face?" Yo, I told you. You just have to... Oh, I got it. You just don't listen. But I'm on your side. I've been watching you. In fact, you could say that I've been dogging you this whole time. This guy is God. Fred Durst is God. You win in your imagination, and that's all that matters. True, this is your imaginary fight to win. I'm like, I couldn't win against a fight of somebody not naked. Bob! I saw your little ghost over there, and I was like, what the frick? When did you get here? I didn't want to miss you. I have no clue what you're talking about, and I'm in no mood to be... Ooh, thunder. Riddled. Talk straight or shut the fuck up. Are you the good witch? Or some kind of angel? Are you Jesus, Fred Durst? Key point of the show. Nice. When did you see... How long ago did you see Fred Durst? Are they even still touring? Look, I've seen like two people in concert. Two bands in concert. I don't even know if you can count one as a band, honestly. Alanis Morissette is God. I don't think I've even ever heard an Alanis Morissette song. I've only ever heard of Alanis Morissette from Weird Al referencing her. Them. The two that I've seen in concert, when I was a kid, I don't remember it at all. But I do remember it was like when I was very, very small. We went and saw Carmen in live. And that's the Christian musician, Christian singer, Carmen. And then I saw Motion City Soundtrack when I lived in Alaska. That's how I actually first heard of Motion City Soundtrack, because I knew somebody who was a big fan, and they were like, hey, they're performing. And then it was like literally a tiny little venue, garage band, like all standing room, no seating anywhere. You would be right in front of the stage, and like the second half of the room that they were all in was like just selling band merch, and it was just a small thing. And then I do remember, I didn't personally technically see them, but I think it was at the Alaska State Fair. Blue October were performing, and you could just stand outside of the staging area because it was an outside venue, and you could listen to Blue October live. But we were there because my mom had tickets to go and see Blue October, so we had to wait for her. But you could be anywhere near the stadium and hear them just fine. OMG, Blue October! Haven't heard them in a while. 9% must be purged. You're gonna purge me, Vanya? And also, welcome back. Garth Brooks in concert and Randy Travis in concert in Korea. Interesting. Cool. Hey, I've seen Dogma. Once. I don't remember much of it. I remember the poop monster. I feel like there's a poop monster. And I remember Professor Snape showing off that he didn't have a penis. And I remember Dogma Jesus. That's like all I remember from that movie. But we can put it on the watch list. You saw Metallica? You saw Linkin Park? I'm jealous. You lived in Korea for a year when it was like 87, 88. Very nice. Buddy Jesus was the best part. It's fun. Yeah, see, I don't remember. It doesn't matter. You had a job to do and you did it. Even if you didn't know that you had to do a job or that you were doing it, the blade that cuts out the colon's cancer got an ugly job, right? I guess it's gotta have faith in the surgeon to get it through while its head's being sliced through blood and impacted. Shit. You know what? Fuck you. All of this, the whole thing is bullshit from top to bottom. I don't even know what I believe, but I know that we killed some ugliness back there, and Amy's dead because of it, and she never hurt anybody. She's born and she gets shit on for 20 years, and then she dies for no reason, and I'm still alive, and I should have been killed a long time ago. Hell, I've considered killing myself several times as a favor to the world. Fred Durst said, Yo, I know that it's hard. You know, there was that boxer back in the 90s, Evander Holyfield. You know that he got to be champion, and then he had that heart disease, ended his career, and was gonna end his life. He goes on to this televangelist, one of those hairspray and polyester dudes. Dude prays and dances over him, and Evander goes back to the doctor. The doctor says that he didn't have a heart disease no more. Holyfield says it's a miracle, but it turned out that they diagnosed him wrong. That could have that could not have been anything less to do with this conversation. You know what people are you know what you people are like, Fred? You're like a genie from a bottle in these stories. You get a wish and you wish for $1,000,000, and then it turns out the million is from an insurance settlement because your best friend died. That makes me think of bit his ear off. Hey, you know what? I wouldn't get in the ring with Mike Tyson. uh, for more than just he would beat me up, okay? This just makes me also think of was it called Bedazzled? The movie where Brendan Fraser makes a deal with the devil like 3 times, and it's always messed up because he's like, you can have your wish 3 times. Mike Tyson would win against the naked guy. That was a good movie, though. It's a great movie, Grumble. Yes, we've finally seen the same movie, aside from Dogma, which I hardly remember. Yup, said Fred, as if I hadn't spoken at all. He never had heart problems. Ain't that something? It turned out that it was a smudge on the x-ray or some shit. Do you wish that you had died instead of Amy, like if you could do it over again? Fuck off. I'm asking a question, yo. Would you do it? Yes. Seriously? Yes, of course. You'd trade your life for her. So tomorrow, David Wong is dead. Amy Sullivan is alive. Stop asking me, Fred. You're making my head hurt. Okay? Mike Tyson versus Naked Tyson? This is like Smash Bros, but with different color outfits. And one of them is naked. I mean, what are you gonna do? Shoot me? Shoot me and resurrect Amy? Or tell me that I've been dead this whole time, like that shitty Bruce Willis movie? Dude, how would you have gone to work every day if you were... Shut up, Fred. We're here. I mean, it could have all been an illusion, buddy. How many times did you actually go to work? We rolled to a stop and I saw a little house, all of the edges rounded onto snow. Fred said, you know what? Don't be too afraid of the dark, yo. You gotta watch on your back now. Okay, dude? I had nothing else to say to Fred, so I jumped out and trudged to the sidewalk. I heard the truck pull away, and John came up behind me. I got half of to my door and stopped. Footprints, fresh prints, leading from the front door around back, the back being where the tool shed was. I had incredibly forgotten all about the tool shed and the body within. I went around, following the tracks and finding myself walking slower and slower, shuffling like a man on his way to death row. I go around that corner and everything will change. Everything. I had put it off long enough. Though I should have done it 2 nights ago. I rounded the corner and saw the tool shed and was unsurprised to see the door was standing wide open. We've come back. I asked the question of, are we going to get closure on this? And here we are. Don't be licking your feet, mister. The lock was hanging there, unlocked, and that was no surprise either. I had put the key back on the nail by the kitchen door, and any cop with a warrant could have gotten it. I went to the door, swung it open, and saw two things that could not register in my mind. The first was Amy, and she was standing there alive, arms wrapped around her parka, and she was looking down at the corpse on the floor, seeming totally lost, like something absolutely did not compute. I could sympathize with her. She heard me, looked at an expression of had an expression of shock that was almost comical, and she looked at me, then the floor, and then back at me. I said, "It's me, Amy." She didn't respond. I moved towards her, wanting to squeeze her and to take her inside and never let her go out of my sight again, and she backed away from me, bumping into the shelf full of glass jars, and she looked like she was planning her escape. I understood that too. And that was the second thing. The body on the floor was me. And I know my own face pretty well, even blue and frozen like a meat stickle, as this one was, nestled among the wrinkled tarp that Amy had thrown open. There was a big bloody hole right in my heart. John stepped in behind me and looked down to the body, and then looked at Amy, going through the same tangled path of thought that I had just tread. And John said to Amy, "Can I see your feet?" "Oh no." "A feet man?" Amy didn't answer. "Or is he looking for the hoofs?" John said, "I know that you don't understand this, but you gotta realize, dude, that Dave and I saw you get killed not 20 minutes ago, right? So, we gotta get some confusion to sort through." Amy nodded and spoke for the first time, saying, "Okay." She left the shed and sat on the steps at the back door with the snow pouring down on her as she pulled off her little leather boots and her socks. I watched as John picked up her foot, examined it, and then had her do the same with the other one. He turned to me and said, "They're clean, dude." And with that, everything snapped into place for me. All of the pieces of the puzzle. If you figured it out before now, well, go win that Nobel Prize, Mr. Genius. I said, "They're stalking the world with their own people, with replacements, things that can bridge the world between the spiritual and the physical. Karak extending the shadows into our world like fingers, controlling like his meat puppets. That's what they were doing in there, making them look like people, monsters under their control, his control, like with Drake. So what happened to the real Drake? Dead?" Amy looked up, eyes wide, understanding where I was going. John said, "Dunno. Maybe they got him and all of the other people locked away somewhere else, but I doubt it. You know, these replacements, the copies, they gotta have all of the memories of the real people, dude. So who knows how they use the originals." I said, "That mark then on the foot, that's their mark. And if we had looked on the other, Amy, we'd have seen the mark, like the symbol for pi. It's probably a brand logo. So they made an Amy," I said. "Probably when they took her, they made a new Amy and infected her, because they knew that if we thought it was her, we would try to bring her back here." We finished together. John said, "And that would have been the end. We would have gotten infected when she hatched, and then whoever was nearby in town, you know, we hatched. So North knew what he was doing," I said. When he shot her, he knew that it was the right thing, because that wasn't Amy." I stood up, took a step toward the tool shed, and was stopped. I had a redhead squeezing me. Amy was clamped on with all of her strength, and her arms around my ribs, her face buried into my shirt, and she was crying, saying that she was sorry, but I couldn't figure out for what. I ran my hand through her hair and whispered in her ears that it was almost over, that it was really going to be okay this time. I just had to take care of this one last thing. And John put his hand on my shoulder and pulled her back towards him. A strange gesture, almost protective. But I was free from her, and I stepped toward the shed. Okay, I could see it. That makes sense. Also, oh no, I had a thought going on there when I was reading oh yeah, corporations. It all comes back. Corporations are evil. You guys, I say this like you guys were there for me recording my video about generative AI this week. I heard Amy behind me saying through choking sobs that she had lost the gun, that she had shot the monster at the mall and ran and lost the thing in the snow, and she called a cab and John shushed her, and she went quiet. I moved toward the tool shed, my heart pounding, suddenly feeling lighter than air, and a weight lifted from my shoulders. I looked up at the snow pouring down from the night sky, and suddenly everything seemed all right, and I said, North knew what he was doing, and I knew what I was doing the other night when I shot this thing in my tool shed. I reached the little building. John didn't follow, but apparently already I knew what I would find. I threw aside the tarp, wrapped around the corpse's feet, and began tearing at the frozen laces on the back pair of the black leather hiking boots, just like mine. Even a scruff along the toe, like mine. The body snatchers were insane about the details. They had to be, and I said, came home and I found this thing in my yard, this thing that looked just like me, and I ran in and I got the gun and I popped him. He probably would have tried to kill me if I stopped. I had pulled off the shoe and peeled off the frozen sock. I saw absolutely no marks on the dead foot. I chuckled out loud for some reason. I dropped the foot and grabbed for the other one, started to pull apart the laces, lost the grip in my numbing fingers, and threw the foot aside, realizing that I was fooling myself. I stood there laughing softly, steam puffing into the darkness, and then finally did what I should have done first. I went and sat down on the step Amy had vacated. As I passed, John pulled Amy back toward him, behind him, backing off from me. Giving me lots of space, I started to take off my right shoe, thought, and then went for the left instead. I yanked off the boot and the sock and looked at my big toe. Then I started laughing so hard that I could barely breathe. And John looked at me with no expression because he already knew. Looked at me like he'd known for some time. Amy hung back behind him, looking nervously between us. I brought my foot up and rubbed at the pi symbol on my toe, as if I could make it come off. I knew, of course, that I never, ever would. So they killed the real David, and then now we've got Body Snatcher David, but it has all of David's emotions and memories, I should say. You weren't even at home like a normal person. The naked man question. Well, now John gets to be friends with an alien body snatcher or whatever this guy is. And if this guy has held on to David's personality, he is something of a slacker. So, you know what? The world is probably going to be okay. Also, Bobby, what did your brother answer? Epilogue. And, well, that's my story, I said. I'm sorry that it is so, retarded. There is no word in the English language for the feeling someone gets when they suddenly realize that they're standing next to an unholy monster impersonating a human. Monstralization, maybe? I suppose. It doesn't matter because the reporter that I was talking to wasn't experiencing the motion right now. Aaron Blonstone of American Lifestyle magazine, or was it American Living? I was too bland to remember. It was too bland to remember. Had neither a tape recorder nor a notebook visible. Ani and I had been walking as we talked, me relaying my story in this moldy halls of the defunct undisclosed shopping center, and I stopped in front of a narrow, closed maintenance store and faced him. I said, "There it is, the door. The door." And he glanced at it and said dramatically, "The door to another world?" It was. Through there and then a little room behind it. But it wasn't a real door, like I said. It was a ghost door. I was going to add that John had named the other world Shit Narnia, but I decided not to lower Arnie's opinion of us any more than I already had. "Well," Arnie said, rubbing his hands together excitedly, "let's go. Have you been listening? Even if we could, you really think that they'd let us escape again? I am not even sure that the world is habitable right now anyways. Come on, let's give it a shot. Just let me poke my head through, and I mean, like, don't get me wrong, I completely believe your story. I just want to confirm that one detail. The one about the ghost door that leads to a world of the bug herders. I suspected that he might be patronizing me. I shook my head and said, "We can't. Even if we wanted to, the door is gone. The other door, I mean. We have been back here for several times now, but the wall where the ghost door was is just a wall now. But I know that you're not asking because you think it's there. You're asking because you think that I'm nuts." Ani reached out and turned the rustling silver knob on the maintenance door. It swung open with a labored creak. He glanced inside the room and then back at me. He gestured to the door as if to say, "See?" I said, "What?" "This is the door that you said got blown off its hinges when the thing, with that thing, the monster came through it." That was an interesting point. I walked up to the maintenance door and ran my hand over it. They must have fixed it, I guess. But look at the opposite wall. You can kind of see the marks in the plaster where the door had bounced off of it. See those scuff marks at the top there? Arnie shrugged, unimpressed. I tried to imagine this article in Life in the USA magazine, complete with a big full-color photo of the wall with the caption, "These are the actual scuff marks that prove the unholy demon-engineered beast burst through the nearby door in order to prevent David Wong from passing through an invisible portal to the gargantuan secret complex with a path to an alternate reality inhabited by a race of half-human beastmasters." I mean, I would read that article, but I would probably be the only one. But why was he still here? Hell, why had he come in the first place? No matter what he said, I still got the vibe from him that he wanted to believe me and that I was letting him down. He had been listening patiently to my story for 6 hours straight, and I wouldn't have done it if the roles were reversed. I would have politely said, "Well, I think I got it. I got all I need," and then sprinted in the other direction, laughing maniacally. But Ani looked like he had been here expecting answers and would now leave empty-handed. I had seen that look before on the faces of tourists visiting the Texas Book Depository in Dallas, where Lee Harvey Oswald took the shots at JFK. I took that tour, and I met some conspiracy buffs, all of us standing at the gunman's window and looking down to the spot where the motorcade passed. It's right there below the window, an easy shot at a slow-moving car. No mystery, just a kid and a rifle and a tragedy. They come looking for dark and terrible revelations and instead found out something even more dark and terrible, that their lives were trite and boring. I had a thought, and I said to Ani, the cop, "John's uncle, Drake, he really did disappear, and he can look up. And you can look that up, along with everything else. And that's two cops who have gone missing, and in both cases, I was the last to talk to them before they did. They've questioned me, and I have a lawyer and everything." "And you told the cops that he was sucked into another dimension, killed and replaced by a monster?" "Basically, only without the words another dimension and replaced a monster. We told them that he pulled us over and acted all crazy, and his partner, the black guy, the one who was piling snow on his crotch, he went back to work the next day like nothing happened. That's the one Amy shot, you know." "Can I talk to him? Because he's also secretly a monster, right?" "I don't know. His name is Murphy, I think, and I bet that he doesn't remember that day, though." Arnie eyed me carefully. He couldn't ask me the big question, couldn't point out the elephant in the room. "How do I know that you haven't killed all of these people, Mr. Wong? The cops, Fred, Big Jim, how do I know that I'm not talking to a bona fide serial killer right now?" Instead, he said, "Look at this form. Now look at this from my point of view, Wong. No, stop. Stop that reporter bullshit. That act where you change your personality according to what you'll think will get the most information. Acting like a skeptic 1 second and my best friend the next and an interrogator after that. Whatever it takes to coax the real story out of me. I've been honest with you, Ani. Mostly. Now be honest with me. Can you do that? Do you have a real personality in there, or is everything an interview technique with you?" He threw his arms to his sides and said, "What the hell do you want from me?" Gesture, but said nothing. "I want to know what you're doing here, Arnie. I mean, you picked up this story, right? You probably got people feeding you ideas all day, and you get to decide which one gets written up, right? But you drove down to the ass middle of nowhere from, Chicago. From Chicago, and used up your whole day out of your schedule to hear this. And you came prepared, notes and shit, and read all of the website about us so that you got another day of preparation in this thing at the top of that. So tell me, Ani, what did you think that you were gonna find?" He shrugged again, hesitant. I don't know. He didn't. I had another thought and said, You're down here on your own time, aren't ya? He didn't answer, but his expression answered for him. I stuffed my hands into my pockets and felt the little metal canister. Cold. I let out a long breath. I nodded toward the floor, which had never been tiled, just bare, unfinished plywood graying with age. Why doesn't David show him his foot tattoo? And also, what if this guy is also a body snatcher who is trying to figure out a way to get back to the other side? Your ghost disappeared. Well, they disappear if you don't post. There you are. If you don't post in the chat after long enough, they disappear. Rainer! When did you get here? He answered yes as casual could be. You guys are all like, oh look, we have somebody else that has joined the wouldn't beat a naked man team. Now there are 3 of us. You're working late? Oh, I hope your shift goes very fast and it's not terrible. You see that part of the floor over there, Arnie? The section of plywood next to the wall? You see how it's all scratched around the edges, like it's been pried up? He didn't answer, but he was looking at it. Help me pull it up. You gotta see this. Doubt crept onto Arnie's face. Maybe a little yeah, we're just gonna shove him in. Kyle! What's up? The nutsack is perfectly visible? Yes, the nutsack is perfectly visible. That means he has no pads? I mean, yes! Does it matter if he's showered or not to you guys? That was a question that came up earlier. Also, it's been a while, Kyle. Maybe afraid of what was under there. Maybe just not wanting to mess up his suit. And I got down on my knees and started without him. The board had warped and I knew that it would come right up. John and I had never replaced the nails when we pulled it up a month ago because by that point in the project, we had both been pretty drunk. I pulled up the sheet of plywood, probably 3 by 5 feet in size, and leaned it against the wall. Under it, there was a framework of metal rails holding up the floor, and under that, a body. More of a skeleton by now, to be accurate. I stepped back from the square hole in the floor and gestured for Arnie to see more for himself. He gave a cautious look, stepped forward, and froze in place. A look of monster realization? Cold recognition hit his face. He didn't know exactly who or what I was, couldn't know, but he didn't know at that moment that I had killed. But he did know at that moment that I had killed. Is that the old David Wong's body? They took the one from the tarp and buried it there because they had nowhere else to put it. You've been sleeping better? That's fantastic. Trying to sound casual, he said, and who is that? Me. Ani took 2 steps back, and here it was, the big moment. The moment at which Ani would turn on his heels and run away and plunge fully into the dark madness of the Wong world. Ani really looked like he would run. I turned and sat calmly down on the floor, my back against the wall, looking up at him. If he ran, I would let him go. Would you? He hesitated, ran a hand over his mouth. The bones below him were long rid of any muscle and skin, now a dried-up, ash-colored framework covered in crumbling clothes. And I thought of the squirming masses of beetles and worms and spiders and maggots that had festered on my body down there, building writhing nests where my mouth had been. I gave a shudder. I said, I'm seeing where I feel like this book is filled with spiders may come in at some point in the... I think that's the second book. Is that the second book? Hank is here. Hey, Hank, welcome. You'll fight the naked guy? You'll get naked too? It is? Oh! There are 4 books in this series, Cool Imp. There are 4. It is completely bonkers. I would imagine this book is bonkers, and I could imagine with more time and more him doing more, he'd take it more. He would keep going. I don't see him pulling back. especially with the way the books are titled. I said, we were going to shove it through the portal, but by the time that we got here, it was gone. No ghost door. So we debated for about half an hour, had a dozen beers, and then finally decided to cram it under the floor and then come back, and then go back home. Ani stood silent for a long moment, then said, what? You didn't worry about somebody finding it like the cops? What crime could they charge me with? Suicide? Ani actually barked a dry laugh. He turned away from the corpse under the floor, surely wishing that he could rewind his life to a time before he had seen it, and walked up to the opposite side of the room and sat. He said, this doesn't change anything. Fine, there's a body. But that don't make the rest of the story true. I sighed. Ani, come on. I know what you're saying, but really, what did you think you were gonna find here? Talk to me, buddy. He shook his head. I don't know. I don't... It's a hobby of mine, that's all. The paranormal, all that. He stopped talking. I waited. He said, and the thing with the shadows, I guess, kind of caught my eye. In the story, there's a lot of this going on around now, and on the net, elsewhere, stories of the shadow people. I think Dean Koontz wrote a novel about them. But you have to ask, did his book come first, or did the stories come first? But all of a sudden, everyone is talking about them. Everyone and no one. Do you know what I mean? Oh, I know, Arnie. Trust me, I know. He continued, and I would think back to what I saw in the basement that day, the shadow. And after that, every now and then, maybe I saw them, maybe I didn't, you know? And it's like, once you see the mouse in your kitchen, you start seeing it everywhere. But there is something else too. At certain times, mostly when I was really sleepy, and this is gonna sound crazy as shit, but considering what you just said, I think that it might as well just let it out. At those times, I think it was a cat. Just glimpses out of the corner of an eye, a cat slipping around the corner or running past a chair. And I think, okay, that's Fluffy. That's my cat, Fluffy. But I've never owned a cat. And then I think that I can remember that maybe I did own a cat, or maybe I didn't. And I swear I can remember a life with it and without, and one without it. And then I heard your story with Todd. You heard the thing about Todd and thought that maybe it was the same thing, that maybe the shadow people took your cat. He shook his head, but not in disagreement. It was a gesture of resignation. He said, I'll never say the phrase, the shadow people took my cat, out loud, or agree to it when you say it out loud. I got a life to live, you know? But yeah, in my drunker moments, I think that somehow I had a cat, and that cat was stolen from me, both in the present and the past. And then I heard bits of your story, and I think, here's somebody who's been down the same road. If nothing else, maybe he's got the same psychological disorder, or maybe we did the same drug in college, and maybe I can get to the bottom of it. So that's why I'm here. The short version, anyway. Alan Wake, that's only Bob's favorite game. Grumble! Taking number one again. And that's true, Ani. I believe you. But that isn't the whole truth, is it? Why do you keep stopping short out of the story? I said, there's more, isn't it? Isn't there? He looked at me. He looked at the open grave on the floor and said, you say John helped you move the body? Sure. I couldn't have done it alone. It's hard enough hauling my own fat ass around without having to double the load. So after he knew about, after he knew the truth, you're saying that he stuck around? I shrugged. Well, because you guys killed a cop, and when you found out that he was one of those, things, why would it be different? Well, that was only after he actually turned into the monster. And what about Amy? Can I talk to her? No. Is she still alive? Around. I didn't answer. Ani sat up straight, energized to be back in reporter mode, ready to dig in again. There's more, isn't there? What is it? Does it have to do with the girl, with Amy? What happened to her? I rubbed my eyes and said, if you had asked me then, as I sat there in the snow and biting cold in my backyard, and I would have said that it was the worst moment in my life, that it would have been a ridiculous thing to say, since technically my life had only been a couple of days long at that point. I don't know how long I was there, looking at the bare feet and the symbol on my toe, with Amy standing a few feet away in a horrified paralysis. I saw John sit on one of the tree stumps and pull out his cigarette rolling kit, watching him carefully roll before patting around the pockets for a lighter, realizing that he had left it in another universe. He threw the cigarette aside with a curse. That's when Amy began crying, like a switch had been thrown. Softly at first, her head in her hand, her fingers clawing handfuls of copper hair. She leaned against the tool shed, and then she was crying hard, a wretched, coughing sound, as her body convulsed with sobs, little kid-type crying, jerking, unrestrained, and terrible, terrible, terrible. Let's, all go inside, dudes, John began weakly. Amy, come on. Duke Man! Coming in for the kill! In the name of Holy Trinity. I think you're gonna have to say your prayers a little sooner. Bob went in to kill Grumble. Good effort, everybody. Oh my gosh, I'm hearing thunder now? She didn't hear him. Her whole body spasming with sobs. A sound like her lungs were having a fist fight. It was truly awful. I closed my eyes and would have plugged my ears too, but not even that would block it, because the very air stank from the sheer awfulness of it all. John looked long at Amy, then at me. Finally, he nodded to himself as if coming to some conclusion and said, "Okay, dudes." He stabbed a finger at Amy. "Amy," he said in a voice that was strong and abrupt, "stand upright." She didn't. "Amy." "Hey." He strode over and grabbed a shoulder of her jacket, shaking her. "Man up. The night's work ain't done. You ready to man up, dude?" She wiped her face and looked at him. "Okay. You still got that gold cross? The one Dave gave you?" She nodded. I noticed a snowflake landed on the lashes of one of her eyes. "Okay. Take that cross and touch Monster Dave with it. If he's evil, he'll explode." I pulled out my sock and shoe and said, almost too quiet to hear, "Leave her alone, John." Pulled on. Oof. Toasty! I don't know if Florida's the hurricane capital of America. Can somebody who is smarter than me answer that question? Is there really I don't think there's a hurricane right now. I don't remember anything about a hurricane. Who is trying to hug? I know that there's a tropical storm. I don't think... And there's been, like, rain on the west side. It hasn't quite made it to where I live. Usually it dissipates to where I live. Toasty, why are you naked? Do you see yourself? That is a nude raccoon. Is there a reason to be wearing your birthday suit today? What do you mean there's a last name? I'm confused. Toasty got shaved? Toasty did get shaved. Toasty, come here. Pink. Orange. Dark. There you go. Ah! Toasty's top hat fell off. There we go. We got you dressed again, Toasty. You're good. You're good. No crying. No. A human Dave wouldn't have said that, John shouted, loud enough for my neighbors to hear. Now sit still while she touches you with the cross. He turned to Amy and pulled on her arm. Come on, man up. He pulled her to her feet roughly, and I thought she mumbled something to him so that I couldn't hear, and John answered, "Don't worry, dude, I'll take care of it." She pulled her arm from him and said, "Amy, I'm not asking you. This needs to be done." She dug into her shirt for the cross necklace and wrapped the thin chain around her fist. She glanced doubtfully at John, who urged her with a gesture. Holding the cross between her thumb and finger like a key, she took it a few cautious steps towards me, her face showing caution bordering on naked fear. Toasty ain't the only one naked tonight, apparently. I heard myself say, "Amy." "Shut up," John screamed. "Don't listen to his lies, Amy, for that is a crafty one there." She drew closer, holding the cross at arm's length, and I looked down at the powdering of snow on my pants, and I looked up suddenly, the cross an inch away from my face. This movement seemed startle Amy as she lunged forward with the necklace. The cross jabbed into my right eye. "Son of a bitch!" I threw myself to my feet, clasping my stinging eye. "You jabbed me with that thing right in my—" "I knew it, bro!" John screamed, his face a picture of indignation, monster realization. "Amy, back away!" John tore off his coat and flung it into the snow, and then he pulled his shirt over his head and stood there, bare-chested, snow landing on his naked shoulders like dandruff. I blinked my injured eye and was relieved to see that I wasn't blinded, and I said, "John, don't be a—" Naked John's about to run at you guys. Guys, it is time to test the pole. Real life. Naked John is ready to throw down. "Shut up! I hope that you like Chinese, Monster Dave, because today the menu is Kung Fu Chicken, and it's all you can eat, baby." John flung himself into a Suedo karate stance, one hand poised behind him and the other one in front, posed like a cartoon cactus. Oh, is that like a cactar? I thought of an odd moment that he had moved his limbs so fast that they made that whoosh sound through the air, but then I realized John was making that sound with his mouth. "Wait!" This was Amy. She ran over between us. "I got him in the eye with it. Don't, John, don't! Just calm down." John let us stop him. Of course, he reached around her and jabbed a finger at me. "She saved your life, bro. I've been wearing you like a pair of I'd been wearing you like a pair of pants." I sighed and said, "I'm going inside." I turned and walked towards the door. After a moment, John dropped his hands by his sides and said, "Yeah." He picked up his jacket and his shirt from the snow and bundled them into his hand. We strode casually, like we were coming in after a tiring game of basketball, and Amy stayed behind, standing there in an angry swarm of snowflakes. John turned to her and said, "Come on in, where it's warm, Amy. We'll hammer this out over a nice can of Leinenkrugel." She looked at him and then at me, not quite sure what he had just transpired, and John went back to her and leaned down, whispering harshly, but out of my hearing, almost like he was scolding her. She said something back, casting a nervous glance at me. They continued this covert argument for a few minutes, with me already inside and watching from the kitchen. I wasn't completely sure what it was about, but I still don't know. Finally, John stomped away from her toward the house. He turned back to her one last time and said, just loud enough for me to hear, "You know fucking well what I mean. I mean, you literally never knew him. When we showed up at your house, that was Monster Dave, and it was Monster Dave thereafter. And I'll tell you what, whatever you think, he's a lot nicer now than he was before. But you wouldn't know." Is John trying to do like a hit job on Monster Dave, or is Monster John really does die at the end in a film with spiders. He stormed away from her, looking pissed, and brushed past me as he entered the kitchen. I said to his back, "John, we gotta move the body. It can wait. He'll still be dead tomorrow." I'm just moving my feet, Tatums. I took one last look at Amy outside, snow gathering on her like a lawn ornament. You gambled away all your poor. Well, just borrow from somebody else. She said, "No, You coming? She made no move, and I waited at the door for a bit before finally turning and heading inside. I went to the living room and sat on the leather recliner. I stared into the cold, dead fireplace on the far wall. It was one of those gas fireplaces that would burn real logs so that it looked authentic. A modern heating source dressed up to look like an old-fashioned one. And it was an idea that I had always found ridiculous, wondering if it was the future that they wouldn't have some kind of laser fireplace dressed up to look like a mere gas fireplace with fake gas lines running from it. I'd heard the kitchen door click open and I knew Amy had decided to come in. That shouldn't have surprised me. Where else could she have gone? I thought for a moment and glanced at the notepad next to the phone, the one that I had used to leave myself a message. Get milk, it said in a hurried scrawl, and I wondered if I drew up a quick last will and testament, would it be legally binding? John is a notary. I could write it up, a few sentences, leaving the house to Amy so that she would have somewhere to live, sign it, and then shoot myself in the temple. But then I felt my pockets and once more remembered that I had lost the Smith hours ago. I ditched the plan for the time being. John popped out of the bathroom, fully clothed now, and turned to intercept Amy in the kitchen. Oh my gosh. I was like, who is... I'm just watching you guys. It's a duel? Jimothy, you need more money. You gotta win more. We are entertaining. You are. I'm distracted. Ah! There goes Toasty. You bet 0 on that duel? You're still taking down John naked? Fair. John popped out of the bathroom, fully clothed now, and turned to intercept Amy in the kitchen. They talked some more in those same low, rough tones from before, both of them entering the living room. Amy sat stiffly on the couch, her arms wrapped around the midsection as I had seen her so often before. It suddenly occurred to me that when she sat that way, the stump of her left wrist was hidden behind her right upper arm. To a passer-by, it wouldn't immediately be apparent that she was missing a hand, so that there would be no reason to do the double take that Amy had grown to dread. Seeing her like that, they just think that she was cold. John took a spot on the floor between us, sitting cross-legged. Okay, how much do you remember, Monster Dave? What memories did they give you? Everything, I guess. There's that missing bit from when I first showed up here. When you came here and shot the real Dave? Yeah? It happened out in the yard, I guess. But there are tracks all over, but otherwise it's the same as before. Or, you know, as far as I know. You guys are fighting again? Oh my gosh. I like the standbys, the bystanders. Oh. But you don't know anything of the real stuff, like where you came from or why you're here. Did you remember those things at the time of your birth? But you remember yours. I mean, Dave's childhood and all of that. School and your parents and friends. Yeah, yeah. You and I met in a computer class. Mr. Gertz, you said the ASCII vagina. You did the ASCII vagina, got kicked out, and so on. You know, and you know that you got to be at work tomorrow, and you know where? A video store. Wally's. Sucks. Coworkers are retarded. Yeah, 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 yeah. And $500 you borrowed from me last month. Fuck you. Okay then. I'm going home. I gotta sleep in my own bed tonight because I gotta work tomorrow. And if you don't leave, and if I don't leave right now, I'm gonna get snowed in here. Amy is going to stay here tonight. He raised a hand to silence my objection. I don't want to hear it, dude. She's gonna stay here and watch you. Now we don't know what exactly you morph into, but if it's like those things that we saw before, we know one weakness is fire. Amy, if you see Dave turn into any kind of monster, set him on fire. Dave, show Amy where the flammables are in the house. Get her a lighter and one of those huge cans of hairspray that the old ladies use, if you have any. You got it? John climbed to his feet, and Amy looking at him with an incredulous, squinted look like he had broken some new bound of human idiocy that she had previously not thought possible. John said, "Remember what we talked about?" And with that, he pulled open the front door and vanished into the white swirl of storm. On the David Wong social awkwardness scale, with a 1 being pickup instead of order counter at a restaurant, and 10 being a guy getting on national TV having sex with a dead baboon, I'd have to say that the following minutes alone with Amy rated on a 9.6. A while into the wordless meeting, 10 minutes or an hour, I don't know, the phone rang. We both jumped out of our skin. I picked up, glancing out my window to see sheets of ice running down in the night. "Hello? It's me. I made it home. Slick as hell. Did a 30-60 going around a corner at Lex in Maine. Have you turned into a monster yet, dude?" "No, John." Get this. Molly is here. "At your place?" "John, how does she even know where you live?" "It's even better than that. She wasn't standing outside the building when I got here. She was in my apartment. She broke in?" "Don't know. She's eating a package of hot dogs right now." I sensed Amy walking past behind me. A moment later, my bathroom door closed. I said, "You gave her the whole package?" "Yeah, they're expired. She'll stop eating when she gets full, won't she?" "Hey, is your power out?" "No, light's still on here." "Fuck. They're out now, John." "Yeah, mine were off when I got in. I thought that it was a bad guy maybe making their move, but I turned on the radio and it's down in several parts of town. I guess they're working on it. They've got a storm on every station, talking like it's a natural disaster. The ice is knocking down trees and power lines, and they said that the state prison and the snow drifted up against the fences so high that the inmates were able to walk over it. The guards couldn't even shoot them because they were afraid of the ACLU. It hadn't occurred to me that the winter storm had been a huge event for practically every person in town except for the three of us who had a bigger fish to fry. I got off the phone with John, blinked as my eyes adjusted to the darkness, and then dug into my cabinets for candles. Amy emerged from the bathroom, her purse slung over her shoulder, and she pawed around the wall to find the way. She put on her glasses on, as if they would help her to see in the dark, and she asked, will your heat go off with the power out?" "Oh, I'm sure it won't." The fight was intense for no reason. Maybe it was more intense because you were naked? I wasn't sure though. Can people really freeze to death in their homes in times like this? I hunted around for a book of matches, found none in the kitchen, and then tried the bathroom as the only other likely place. I pulled open the drawer on the vanity and found my matches. I opened the medicine cabinet. Someone had been here. I normally have 3 prescription bottles of medication, and all of it was gone. Hell, even the aspirin was gone. All of it had been here after we came home to find the house ransacked. I had checked. You are energized? Heck yeah. I shuffled around in the drawer to see if anything else was missing, and I saw my scissors were gone too. I could just have misplaced them. Suddenly, I suddenly flashed on Amy leaving the bathroom, her purse with her, and figured out what a smart person would have figured out the minute John had told Amy to stay with me. It turned out I was wrong about the furnace. The house started losing heat rapidly the moment the lights went down. I guess the gas stays on, but the electric fan that blew out the heat don't operate without electricity. An hour later, Amy and I were huddled in front of a fake fireplace, sitting on the floor wrapped in blankets like Bugs Bunny Indians. I got to the fireplace lit and turned up it to high as it would go. There were no logs in it, but there were just for visual effect anyway, the blue flames licking the air and putting out their own heat. We sat there like that, a flickering pool of amber light around us, with no sound but the hiss of the gas and the creak of the wind leaning on the exterior walls. The silence was driving us nuts. You have my medication in your purse?" I finally asked. She didn't answer. "So I'm on suicide watch? Do you have my scissors too?" "I'm sorry that I freaked out before in the yard. That wasn't fair. You have to accept people for what they are." "No, Amy. You're right. You were right then when you freaked out, and you're wrong now that you're calmed down and telling yourself that everything is going to be okay. It's not. You did fine today. Yesterday too. That's not the point. Whatever happened, whatever it happens, whenever it happens, you know one thing, that I won't be able to control it. Amy, you have to get out of town, away from this place. We all do. Let's all move away. Bring John if you want. Amy, I told you before. No, we tried it your way. Let's get far away from here, and if the bad guys follow, we'll deal with it then. But let's at least try. Okay. But it'll take time for us, John and me. We got jobs, we got things in order. We got to get things in order. John's got family here, but you you can go now and say that we do it tomorrow. Is there anywhere that you can go? You got a friend far away? Anywhere. Somebody else with a couch that you can crash on? I don't know. I guess I know a girl on the internet. She lives in Utah with another girl. They're lesbians. Good. That's good. You can call them or send them something on your computer and ask if you can crash there. We'll buy you a plane ticket and you can fly your ass over to Utah. Why is everybody going to Utah now? Oh my gosh. Cream is ramming people with his big head. She said nothing. She scooted over and leaned a head onto my shoulder, ribbons of firelight dancing on the lenses of her glasses. Eventually, she said, "And then I'll never see you again." I couldn't think of a way to answer without telling an outright lie, so I just mumbled something that sounded assuring, and she said, "I'll go, but I'll call when I'm out there. And you have to take my calls. And if you don't, I'll just come right back. And if I don't get an answer from you, then I'll get on a flight back the next day." Uh-huh, sure. She arranged herself so that she was lying down, her head on my lap, her breathing slowing and softening as she drifted off. She mumbled, "It's like so cool that it's snowing out there, but not in here. It can't snow on us. That's so cool." And she started snoring softly. And that was that. I formulated a plan that if she got out of here and away from the hell from this town, got a job and went to bars with her lesbian roommates, she'd settle in. Forget all of this and all about me. Out there, the guys would figure out how hot she was without both hands, and she'd meet somebody and stop calling, and then all of this loose ends would just be tied up, and I should shoot myself and take a bunch of pills, and that would clean up the situation once and for all. And I could do the real will thing, even with a lawyer to draw it up, complete with stipulations that John had to deliver my eulogy in the form of a 17-minute long guitar solo performed with a dual-necked guitar shaped like a naked woman. As for the property, I could sign it over to. I saw a light to my left. I slowly turned my head to see that with power still out all over the city, the television had clicked on. Hands. That's what I saw. A pair of hands, palms pressed against the screen, and then another pair, fingers clawing at the glass as if it were trying to escape. For a moment, I thought that it was snowing in the background, but then my mind registered the worms, the white flying worms that poured through the air behind them, and I thought that I heard a scream or felt it somehow, and a spray of red splattered on on the hands on the screen. A pair of hands fell away, and just two were left, grabbing at the glass in desperation. One hand formed a fist and smashed against the glass as if trying to break it, and it pounded again and again, and I thought that I could see the blooms of blood opening on the knuckles. The fists reared away this time, and swung, and the TV shook. I almost pissed my pants. The fists pulled back, blood trickling down between the fingers now, and smashed against the screen once more. Again, the TV rattled in the shelf of my entertainment center, the whole set edging forward an inch with the impact. The fists drew back one last time, and the set clicked off. Blackness, those transmissions, the ones from Shit Narnia, never returned. It took me 4 hours to fall asleep. Why are you bombing everything? Cursed with small hands? Is it really a curse? I also have small hands. When I was working in food demo, I was the only one in at work that could wear the small gloves, and then right now I have compression gloves that are the XLs. I need to find my other compression glove though. I can't find one of them. You refuse to lose your imagination? What? You can do that? You can just decide someone's imaginary and just like you've never come across small gloves? Only well, they're the small food gloves are still bigger on me. I've never found gloves for adults that fit my hands. The XX, you have to get the XL compression gloves. They're already meant to be tight. It actually wasn't for another couple of days that we were able to get Amy on a plane. The storm broke the next day, but the weather had still messed up the flight schedule. It took a day to hear back from her lesbians. They were thrilled to the point of giddiness to have her, though, and after an hour-long giggle phone conversation, they made arrangements to meet her at the airport in Salt Lake City. The two girls lived in Mill Creek, which I guess was just outside of the city. We kept busy during the 2 days before Amy left, presumably forever, and I successfully avoided any conversations with her. I had lots of snow to clear off of the sidewalk and even made paths around the side of the house for Molly. We took Amy shopping and she bought a luggage and a bunch of sweaters because we couldn't convince her that Utah wasn't frozen a mountainous wasteland year round, and I went back to Wally's and finished a long delayed project of placing anti-theft stickers on all of our DVDs. It was kind of tedious, dreaded task that I wouldn't want to dump in someone else's lap until after I committed suicide. On Wednesday, Amy packed up and I drove her the 3 hours to undisclosed international airport in my Bronco. I had begged John to come along and act as a buffer against the awkwardness, but he had work, his crew fixing a wall on the local diner that had collapsed under the weight of the fallen tree. Several times during the drive, Amy would ask me if I was okay, and I would say, sure, and then turn up the radio. I almost made it. I carried her bags in, and we waded through the airport's bullshit that seemed to take forever. She picked up her boarding pass, and we checked their bags in, and there's a security guy that made it clear that only the one with the boarding ticket could go any further, and I said goodbye and wished her a pleasant flight. And that's where Amy lost it. She threw her arms around my neck and started crying into my shirt, telling me that I had saved a life, that she didn't know what she would do if something happened to me, and a whole lot of other ridiculous things. Then she made me promise that I would take care of myself. I did, before I could catch it. Bye, Bob! Your city has an airport? Oh, he said he drove 3 hours from the city to get to the airport. So I don't think he has an airport in his city. Because, like, Lakeland technically has an airport, but not really because it is very limited and it just got here. But, like, Tampa and Orlando both have an airport, and they're both an hour. Well, Tampa's like an hour, and Orlando's like an hour and a half away. You hit my glasses? Gosh darn it. That's why they bounced. Bob, stop bullying me. Then she made me promise that I would take care of myself, and I did before I could catch it. She stepped back and wiped her eyes and said, "You promise?" "Yeah. I'll remember. Remember you promised." This is your space now. No! Bob's airspace. I pointed at her and said, "Hey, say what you want about me, but I keep my promises. You guys will come to see me in Utah. I'm serious about this now. I'm going to be mad if you don't." "Sure, Amy. You and me can share a room. John can sleep with the and you'll look after Molly and take care of the house. By take care of, she meant destroy. We had talked about that, decided to burn the place down. Our only point of disagreement is I wanted to make it look like an accident to collect insurance money, and she wanted to do the opposite and let the insurance lapse and just blatantly torch the place. We kissed and said some gooey things to each other that would sound silly if you weren't there, and I stood around and waited for her to board, passing through the security and letting them check her shoes and all of that shit, and watched her walk away and kept watching out the terminal window as her plane climbed and turned into a speck in the sky. I didn't cry, and if you think I did, good luck proving it, asshole. I started to wander back toward the exit when I noticed the little girl following me. She couldn't have been more than 5 years old, chubby blonde hair down to her waist, and I walked and she kept up, and I stopped and she stopped. Her eyes never left mine, and I finally turned and was about to ask if she was lost when she got down on her hands and knees and then lay flat on her stomach. Confused, I considered just walking away when she started slithering along the floor like a snake, legs collapsed together and swishing back and forth behind her like a tail. She slithered across the floor like this all the way to the nearest wall, pushing her way into the men's restroom, opening the swinging doors with the crown on her head. Of course, I followed. I stepped into the room and saw the little girl melt into a puddle of black oil. The blackness rose and took a deep shape, and I began to consider that I had made a mistake. I started to back out of the room, realizing the two guys pissing at the urinals nearby didn't even acknowledge any of this. Suddenly, the black shape sprung at me, and for a second, all I could see was blackness, darkness. The air stank. My ankles were submerged in cold liquid that sloshed when I moved my feet, and I blinked and I could almost see that I was in the doorless room. I reached out and touched a metal wall, and I could see only the two small spots of orange light, and I realized that with horror that this was the shadow creature's eyes. There was a steady rumbling sound all around us, and I had to brace myself on the floor seemed to shift and tilt under me. The black thing stood at the end of the room and stared. "Where are we?" I asked. The answer did not come in the room of an audible voice, but a picture. In a blink, I had a perfect mental image of an airliner in a spot under the passenger's compartment where a large center of fuel tank was housed. I was standing inside of the center fuel tank as the path of a passenger jet. The liquid at my feet was jet fuel. I also knew with some certainty that this was Amy's plane, that I was standing just a few feet under the spot where she was sitting and likely sticking up a conversation with whoever she was seated with. Strangely, the first thought that came to me, even before "am I really here?" was that they had forgotten to fill up this tank. Then the answer came to me that they often leave it empty depending on the distance and the load of the flight, and then I realized how creepy it was that I was having this telepathic conversation with this thing, and I made an effort to close my mind to it. The shadow thing moved. It drifted like a puff of smoke in a mild breeze, stopping near a bulky apparatus that emerged from the ceiling and dangling to the floor, probably by an instrument for measuring how much fuel was left. The fumes were burning my eyes and nose and lungs, and it was making me lightheaded. The black thing drifted to the apparatus, swirled a black appendage over and around the conduit, a jointed line that probably housed an electrical wire. The black thing caressed the line almost sensually. Sparks flew from the conduit, and I screamed. I turned to Arnie and said, "There was this light and heat and noise, a sound like a junkyard falling down a mountain." I concentrated, tried to bring back my memory, that very real feeling of my flesh burning to the vapor in a millisecond, my bones cooking to that black charcoal, but I couldn't. Not really. The memory was hazy and unreal, like the memories of a hamster that we owned when I was 5, the one that escaped and went and then got eaten by snapping turtles. I can't picture it, but I know that it was there, and that it wasn't very fast. And then everything was back to the way that it was. I was standing there again in the dark, shoes and socks soaked in that stinking ice-cold liquid. To say that it was a weird feeling doesn't do it justice, because at that moment, I had a distinct memory of the explosion happening and an equally clear memory of it not happening. This seems to confuse Ani, understandably enough. So, did the plane go down or not? No, it didn't. Not yet. This confused Ani further, but he waited patiently for an answer. And I was standing there in the stench and the darkness. A thought came to my mind, perfect and clear. The voice of that thing, the Shadow Man. The moment, it said, is forever. And I understood right then that all of the moments are forever and that they can go back to there, to that spot at any time, in that wet, stinking belly of that plane. They can go back and short that wire or jam open that valve and blow Amy out of the air along with 200 other people. But that ain't so strange, is it? You drive to the doctor's office to hear the results of your x-ray and you pray that it isn't cancer. Isn't that what you're praying for? That God will reach back to the past, back before the x-ray was taken, before you even saw the doctor months before, so that he can stop that tumor from forming in the first place? Only this was the opposite, right? A threat. They were telling you that they can go back and make a bad thing happen, take your girl out of the equation anytime that they want, so that you wake up someday and you see an empty bed beside you and say, gosh, it's a pity that Amy died in that plane crash all of those years ago. And you said, look at all of those headlines, how they have changed, and all of those lives that were lost and history is tweaked, changed to suit their needs. You do catch on, Ani. It takes a little bit of time, but you do catch on. And the message was that you need to back off, because why else make the threat? They were saying that you need to stop interfering with whatever plan they've got, because if not, then they'll go back and cut Amy out of the timeline. You see, I screwed it up. I had it just right in the beginning. I had no connections, no family, no money, no career, no nothing. What could they do to me? What could they take from me? But all of that changed with Amy. Now they've got me. Now they've got a hold of me. And I see her, and she'd look up to me with those green eyes, and I think, saving the world, that's Hollywood bullshit. The best thing that I can do is save a little bit of the world. This little corner, that's me, and this girl that we stand in. And every time I think that, somewhere I can hear laughter. Them laughing. Like this a game over. Check and mate. And you never ate her? What? You never turned into the monster and ate her. No! I've never turned into a monster at all, as far as I know. But you're going to. I don't know what this'll mean to you in the light of what you just said, but I think that you should hear it. Are you going to tell me everything this time, Arnie? The real reason that you're here? Because I'm gonna tell you now, if you decide to write all of this up in a future article, it's gonna suck. For the purpose of what I'm going to say, we're going to start with the premise that the shadow people are real, okay? I'm not that I'm convinced, but just for the purpose of what I'm about to say. Yeah, and that time doesn't mean the same thing to them as it means to you and me. And like you said, they can reach backwards and pull you right out of the past and the present and everything, and nobody is the wiser. Right. So, how far back do you think that they can go? Could they, go back and vanish the guy who cured polio? I don't think so. But say that they worked it like links in a chain. They touch the guy who pulled Bill Gates out of the car wreck 30 years ago and make it so the guy was never born, so that he could never save Bill Gates, and then Gates dies as a child, and tomorrow we wake up in a world where everybody is using Macs? Oh, I don't know, Arnie, do you? And you mentioned earlier that you got a box on your TV that you play games on, the games where you wander around and shoot people. Well, John does. He's got like 6 of them if you count the ones in his closet, the PlayStation and an Xbox or whatever else they sell. And those names mean nothing to me. Tell me, you don't find anything weird about it? Don't you get funny feelings when you play those kinds of things? I don't know, not really. The first time that I saw one of those game machines was a month ago, and then everybody had one. He waited, but I didn't reply. I got a nephew, 11 years old. He's all about the comics and his remote controlled cars and Rob Schneider movies, but a few weeks ago, I come home and I see him sitting on the couch, leaning forward like he's in trance. And I mean, I've never seen concentration like that on a kid's face. Never. And he's got this plastic thing in his hands with buttons on it, and he's just hammering away. And I turned to the television and got almost sick. There's just a gun barrel on the screen at the bottom, muzzle flash shooting out at the end and people getting ripped to shreds, sprays of blood everywhere, and I realize with feeling like I ate something rotten that he is controlling the gun. He's sitting there operating a damned murder simulation, and his mother comes in and tells him to say hi and to his uncle Arnie that I'm visiting, and she's glancing at the TV like it's nothing, like it's perfectly normal for kids to do something that used to make new recruits puke back at war, to look at the human shape and the people on the screen look like they were real as you and me, to look at the people shape and pull that trigger and watch it go down and not even flinch, not even feel that intrinsic twinge at causing a death. And I served next to some cold-hearted bastards in the war, guys who had that stare, you know, kids from the streets, kids who got beat from before bed every night growing up. And even those guys, those hard characters, they would freeze up at the first time that they had to pull a trigger with the living thing at the other end. Well, they're pretty violent, but they're just games. Open your ears, Wong. I'm not telling you that these games have been around and I'm such an old geezer that I've never noticed. These games, the devices that play them, they didn't exist before last month, and now they're everywhere, on every TV set, and hey, ask around, and people say that they have been common for years and years, and I'm a journalist, and I travel, I got kids in the family, and I know the world, and they didn't sell those games boxes before. I know that they didn't, because it's insane that they do it all. But I started seeing the shadows move, and I got up one day and suddenly every kid is glued to a box that's training him. Tell me that it ain't. Millions of them all over the country, all over the world, millions of kids spending hours and hours getting quicker and quicker on the target, on the trigger, getting truer and truer aim, and colder inside. That's training. That's conditioning if I ever saw it. And in this world, this version of reality that played out, nobody finds this strange. Really? It makes me think this dude, it's like, video games didn't exist before a month ago. This guy is one of the Berenstein. It just messed his head up so bad. He is getting sensitive over video games, yes. He spelled your name wrong. No. There was nothing to say. The thought that the bad guys that had that kind of power just sank me, left me numb. The bad thing was I couldn't even write off Ani's as crazy since he had already wasted most of his day on me. That really wouldn't be fair. And the thing is, as time goes on, I can feel it fading like a dream. I get used to the idea. I think, yeah, sure, they've always been there, these games. It's me, it's the stress, it's the age, it's the drugs that I did back in the day coming back. But then I flip around on the news and I see other little differences, things I know ain't right, like the Pope John Paul II, still out there popping and looking 100 years old. And I remember that guy getting shot and killed way back in the early 90s, and he got replaced by some guy named Pope Leo or something. And I squint and I can almost picture the other Pope's face, a black guy, younger, in his 50s, but no, he's nowhere to be found now. And here's yet another little thing that's been tweaked, and it's impossible, and it's so big. This idea that's thinking about it makes me feel like a little worm stuck in a tread of a tire of an 18-wheeler. And you know what I'm saying? So, what do we do? Is this really what's going on? What do we do? I'm gonna suggest nothing. Because you're afraid that they'll take Amy? Look, if we entertained the idea that these things are real and that this thing is Karak, is really tampering with the world, and I assume that it's not for the purpose of making it better, then surely there is something that we can... Oh, there is, Ani. I know there is. It's called being willing to sacrifice everyone around me for a cause. And why not? All of the great men do it. The pyramids were built with tens of thousands of nobodies who were worked to death so that the big thing could be achieved. That's the name of the game. That's how you defeat the bad guys. Just be willing to spend your friends like pennies. That's all. You asked me earlier if I was a sociopath. Well, you'd better hope that I am, because the world was built by sociopaths, men willing to send 1 million innocent boys into battle to be chopped up to screaming giblets. Also, a banner could be raised over another piece of land with houses and markets and roads soon after. The psychologist back in school, she gave me the PCLR. BS! You did not get the PC. You only get the PCLR in jail. Sorry. We spent like freaking a month on the or more than a month. Maybe it was a month on the PCLR. That's a test where they rate you from 0 to 40 based on personality traits of sociopaths. Glibness, inflated ego, violence, juvenile delinquency, all of that serial killer shit. Anything above a score of 30 gets you a diagnosis of sociopath. I got a 29. And the irony is that I had to steal the file from the cabinet to find out that score. Do you think that that's worth the extra point? I'm not following you. Which would prove that I'm a monster, Ani? Sacrificing the people that I love for the fight, or walking away from the fight to save the people that I love? Just hear me out. Say that we just go public with it, with your story, my story too. Why, Arnie? What good is it gonna do? You get other people to come forward, other people like us whose sense of what's going on. Strength in numbers. Hell, people believe in angels and UFOs and every other thing. Listen, the bad guys can't make us all disappear, can they? They've got to have limits to what that they can do. They got to. Why? This is all I've got, Wong. I have no faith to speak of, and so no skills, but you see, the truth, the power of the knowledge in the hands of the people, all the journalism school, song and dance, that's what I believe in. It's all I believe in. I've got nothing else. I got nothing else to fight for, man. But I know this too. You took my call for a reason. So that makes me think that you had the same idea. That was Amy's idea, meeting you. She's still in Utah? Who? Amy. Just checking. Yeah, she's still there with the lesbians. There's been some incidents since she's left. A big monstrous guy has come after me and I killed him twice. Had to cut off the head, and I found this big slug thing in my kitchen. We fought a monster made out of meat, and they took their shots. I didn't want Amy to be a part of that. I wanted something better for her. I tried to sort of cut her off, but get her into a new life, her own life, but she calls me all the time. Ever since she left, she calls, and I wound up with a $400 phone bill one month. I told her about you wanting to meet me, and she told me that I should do it, and that she had a feeling. See? She knows. She knows! And you know that we got to shine a light on those cockroaches. The shadows hate the light. Let's shine my light on those bastards. Let's people know what's happening in this world. It is the epilogue. Just telling your story that won't do shit. Testimonies of two nut jobs that'll just get us lumped over with the Roswell guys, a minority of nerds pleading a ridiculous case supported by emails from equally crazy and lonely people. Then what do you want to? We'll show them this. This is real, Ani. A physical piece of evidence. That's what Amy thought. That if you could get this in the hands of somebody, a lab or something, I don't know, then there's gotta be more soy sauce out there. We already got 2 canisters, or maybe I'll come back in this bottle the way that it did before. Maybe the bottle manufactures it, but you gotta know people at the university, somebody with an electron microscope, because I'm thinking that whoever takes the first close look at the soy sauce is gonna have a brown stain down the bottom of his lab coat a second later. Yeah, just make sure that they keep it cold. Yeah. Make that the story. Hell, let them see the effects themselves. Feed that shit to a lab rat and watch the fun begin. See the thing start levitating and speaking French. And just like that, I felt an intoxicating rush of hope. I tried to crush it, to push it down, to expose it to the reality and kill it off, but I couldn't. It was a sunrise, a kid's sight of snowfall on a school morning. Hope. That's all that this can turn out to be, that all of this can turn out to be okay. That somehow a tide this big and black can be turned back. hope like a wildfire, thoughts of presents under Christmas, under the Christmas tree, and the smell of cookies coming from the kitchen, and a certain look in a girl's eyes that lights you up inside. That beautiful border between nightmare and morning, when you realize that all of the monsters menacing you have evaporated like smoke, leaving behind only the warm blankets and the pale sunlight of a Saturday's dawn. Amy Sullivan. My name is Amy Sullivan. Her plane landed in Salt Lake City. Or her name is Amy Sullivan. And she called me just 2 days ago and talked to me for 4 hours, and she had bought a new album and made me listen to the whole thing over the phone. Amy Sullivan, she's still there. Amy. I said, and you're willing to risk everything, your life, your family, and I mean, best case scenario, your career as a journalist is going to be over, because from now on, this is going to be what you're known for. You don't forget that there may be people, real people, who don't want this out. The people who ransacked my apartment, the people from the factory or the CIA or the NSA or Men in Black or whoever it is, they don't want this stuff known. Are you ready for that, Arnie? Your brother is doing the New York accent now, too? Sorry, Cream. It'll spread now. Yes, it will. Shit. I've been around, Wong. My first year out of journalist school, I got knocked cold at a segregation protest. That was 1964, and I woke up with my camera busted on the pavement and blood running down my shirt. This fat guy steps all over me and says, "Stay down." I think back then I knew what I was doing this job for. But in the years since, what? What, Wong? They called you a slur, even though you're white? Is that some kind of joke? What are you laughing at? I couldn't answer. This time it was because laughter was choking off my air. What, asshole? Answer me. I couldn't. It was the kind of laughter that's so hard that it doesn't make a sound, a spasm in the lungs, in the brain. What? I choke out. Describe yourself to me, Arnie. Physically tell me what you look like. No. No, you're fucking with me. Come on, Arnie. I got places to be. No, because you're not black, Arnie. To me, you're a chubby white guy with a gray mustache, a big fat necktie tied to that huge Windsor knot. Arnie's eyes went wide and narrowed in disgust. My first thought when I saw you, Arnie, was that you looked just like I imagined you. I actually said that to myself. I should have known. You now, and now I have wasted my whole day. This was a wicked twist in the movie, too. What was the twist? He sprayed something nasty under his breath, turned on his heel, and stormed from the room. I sat there, seizures and suppressed laughter trembling through my gut. Gotta cut that out. Inappropriate laughter in the universal sign of madness. I took a series of long breaths, my whole afternoon wasted. Slowly, the ridiculousness of the situation suddenly stopped being funny and started pissing me off. If Arnie left in his car, I didn't have a ride back. I climbed to my feet and followed the echoes of his footsteps through the mall. I caught up to Arnie in the dark of the parking lot. He had his keys in his hand and was walking toward the rental car and then stopped. He was staring at the car as the spot toward the rear, the trunk. I walked up slowly, not sure what he would do next. You never know how people will react in this situation. The way that he was looking at that trunk, he knew something. What would he do when he figured out the truth? What would he do? What would you do in his shoes? I stepped up about 10 feet behind him and said, "You think that there's something in there, Arnie?" He didn't answer. He was studying his car keys. "Come on, Arnie, open it. The sooner you do, the sooner we can move on." With shaking fingers, Arnie twisted the keys in the lock. He lifted the trunk lid, stared wordlessly at what was below him for probably a full minute. His keys fell from his hands and hit the gravel with a chink. And from a moment, I was sure that Arnie was faint. Was that even possible for somebody who was already dead? An interesting question. I strode up behind Arnie. In the trunk was a thin black man, probably in his early 60s, a graying afro that grew in a patterned baldness horseshoe around his head that was splattered with blood. The head was not attached to the body, and it had been neatly sliced off, a job so quick and efficient that the blood-stained bow tie around his severed neck was still tied and straight. The man in the trunk could not have looked more different than Arnie Blondstone, that I had known. But he was undoubtedly the real one, and I said, "I'm sorry, Arnie. I really am. I think that I'm one of those few people in the world who can truly sympathize with you." Arnie wheeled on me like I was the devil, and he pointed a finger gun at me and said, "You did this. You killed me, you son of a bitch." "Look at your body, Arnie. The one in the trunk, I mean. Look at the dried blood. You've been dead for days. No, I think somebody got wind that you had contacted me, and so they took you out. I'm really sorry about that. It's sort of my fault, I guess. But I'm not a fucking ghost. This is bullshit. Bullshit. I drove you all around town. I can touch you." He reached out and grabbed my shirt to demonstrate. "What kind of trick are you playing, asshole? Is this some game that you play? The way that you made me see that thing in your truck? Did you drug me?" I reached up and easily pulled Arnie's hand from my shirt, and then I reached out and put my hands under his armpits and lifted him into the air. He was about as heavy as a department store mannequin, and I doubt that he'd ever lifted one of those, but he can probably guess that they're not very heavy. Arnie's eyes grew wide once again, and I set him gently back down. I said, "You're an astral body. Do you know what that means, Arnie?" Arnie didn't hear me. He clutched his chest, looking at the world around him as if suddenly every stone and blade of grass held some new terror behind it. I said, "It's a stage of manifestation between the physical and the spiritual, a body that's half there." Arnie ran. He sprinted to the driver's side of the sedan and yanked the door open. He threw himself into the seat and then went to his car keys and realized that he didn't have them. He put his hands to his face and leaned over the steering wheel, eyes closed. I walked up to his door and said through the window, "This is my fault, Arnie. Not just getting you killed, but this half-life that you've got, I did this. I projected you. It's the soy sauce. It's one thing that it lets me do. I'm thinking that you got killed right after we talked on the phone. You know how you talk somebody and you imagine what they look like based on their voice? Well, when you got killed, you immediately assumed the shape of, this can't be. It can't. I don't accept it. I got grandkids. I got a vacation coming this June. I'm going to Atlantic City. I got tickets." Yeah, you're in the denial stage right now, Ani. This is all normal. I got you. I gotta go, okay? I have to go to a call. I have to go call Amy and tell her that she owes me $5. Shut the fuck up, Wong. Right now. I refuse to believe that I am only here because I popped out of your imagination. Arnie vanished, and I said to the empty car, "I'm sorry, Arnie. I really am." I went around to the trunk of the car and almost closed it, but thought that maybe I shouldn't have my fingerprints on the trunk containing a corpse. This also eliminated the idea of driving the car back to the restaurant. I looked up into the starless, overcast sky and hoped that the rain would hold off until I got back to my truck. I walked into the night. I passed by a weedy vacant lot, a Burger King, and church operating out of a building that used to be a bowling alley. I passed a rail-thin guy who looked homeless and did a double take because he was wearing a stained white t-shirt that seemed to have my name on it. It had a yellow caricature of a buck-toothed Asian man that said Mr. Wong under it. I thought that I had seen that character before somewhere and dismissed it. Half a block later, I saw two kids who looked maybe 13 smoking cigarettes and looking at me suspiciously. The kid on the left had a black concert shirt with a picture of some glam rock band on it. Below it, it said The Darkness. The other kid had on a flannel shirt, unbuttoned. Most of the t-shirt underneath was obscured, but between the flannel and the words "is hungry," it peeked out. I I thought that I could see the sentence forming there, which wouldn't be all that strange in the context of my life. I passed an old lady coming out of a storefront craft store. Her blouse didn't say anything. I saw a busty girl with an olive t-shirt that said "Stay out of Iraq," and I thought that I might apply. I stepped out of the blacktop of the They China food parking lot and saw a white t-shirt approach. I squinted and saw that it said in bold black letters, "Balls, it's what's for dinner." I looked up and saw it was John wearing the shirt. "Where'd you go, dude? I saw your Bronco, but the lady at the counter was closing up and she said you left a long time ago. Did you meet that guy?" Did the waitress remember me being with the guy? She said that she couldn't remember. The question seemed to confuse her a little, dude. Did he show? I came so that he could get my picture. I waved my hand dismissively toward the horizon. It didn't work out. Turned out that he was dead the whole time. He didn't even know it. He was a semi-solid astral body. I hate it when they do that. Yeah, I had to break the news to him. He was driving around a rental car with his own corpse in the trunk. I'm looking at this old white guy who looks like a door-to-door salesman, and that's not even what he really looked like at all. Well, he's black, right? Dave, his picture is here at the top of all those articles I printed out for you. Got a bow tie, kind of bald. Didn't you read any of them? I don't know. I got busy. So I guess he's not gonna do that article? I gave John a scowl that told him that I wasn't going to dignify that with an answer, and I said I gotta go back to the mall. I left the floorboards pulled up. I was showing Arnie the body. I'll put it down. I was gonna go there anyway. You go out there by yourself? Why? Amy called, looking for you. Big surprise there. She said that her calls to your cell phone, or she calls her cell phone as soon as you get in. Hey, didn't you didn't you better like $5? The thing with the reporter would turn out to be a clusterfuck. I walked in the front door and threw a silver canister at the ends table with with my car keys and spare change. I found my TV remote between the sofa cushions and clicked on the TV. It was some show about a family that builds custom motorcycles while they scream at each other. And about half an hour later, the phone rang. I glanced at the caller ID, picked up, and said, "You owe me $5. Hi, it's me. Did you say? What did you say?" Nothing. I don't think that thing with a report is going to happen. Can you hear me? Go to your door. What did you say? Amy, hello? Go to your door. This all seemed very strange. I tensed up, went to the front door, and peered out the little window at the top. Nothing. Curiously, I opened the door and stepped onto the porch. I turned to my right and saw Amy sitting in one of the plastic chairs, her cell phone in her hand. She was wearing a white and yellow sundress and sandals. Her hair was longer than it had been the last I'd seen it, actually touching her shoulders a little now. That was about as long as it would grow. In a timid voice, she said, "Surprise!" Are you really here? Yep, I flew in this afternoon for your birthday. John knew all about it. Blame him. He didn't really go to work today so that he could pick me up instead. He wanted it to be a surprise. I was surprised, if for no reason other than the sudden realization that my birthday was just 2 days away. So, you here now? Yup. Hey, check this out. It's awesome. Amy leapt to her feet, raised one leg, and planted one foot on the railing of the porch. This caused her dress to fall back to her thigh, and my heart skipped a beat, like I had never seen this particular naked patch of skin on a woman before. Amy was pointing out something on her ankle, and she was putting her legs back down before I took my eyes off of her thigh long enough to notice it. She had gotten a small tattoo on her ankle, Chinese characters. It's, nice, I said. What's it mean? Ankle? She laughed and then closed the distance between us and clamped a hug around me that knocked the wind out of my lungs. Do you like it? I told Crystal that you wouldn't like it. What difference does it make? If you like it, then that's that. If I don't like it, then I can screw myself. So you're saying you don't like it? It's fine, Amy. You got just one, right? Maybe you won't know unless you check me. I laughed. She giggled. We both fell silent. We left the trail of clothing from the front door to the sofa. A certain amount of time later, Amy and I lay on the couch under the American flag Afghan that John had bought me from a garage sale years ago. The TV was still on, and we were both watching it absently. I asked, "So how long are you in town?" She didn't answer. These guys are all worked up about building these motorcycles, don't they? You're still working on that craft shop, right? When do you have to go back to work? Amy shrugged. Amy? I quit. Oh, so when are you going back? I wanted to talk to you about that. Amy, no. You can't stay here. Why? You have another girlfriend? You know what I'm talking about. I can't go back, David. It's awful. Crystal and Tanya, they're always like having naked pillow fights and stuff. I can't be around that. Really? No, they told me to tell you that. Amy, don't make me go through all of that again, explaining why it's not safe. I shouldn't have to. She twisted around to face me. No, see, I worked it all out. I think that right about there, there's proof that you're not like evil or whatever. You're looking out for my safety, even though you're lonely and depressed every minute I'm away. And if you're truly a bad, then you'd only care about yourself. You'd tell me that you wanted me to stay around, knowing that it was dangerous for me to be, but doing it anyways. You're wrong. How? I do want you to stay. Good. I will. She kissed me on the cheek and rolled over again. I tried to figure out exactly what point I had lost control of the discussion. Now, I really don't have a place to stay here in town. Well, but John said that I could stay with him until I found something over my dead body. He told me that you'd say that. He told me to tell you that. He also wanted me to tell you that he has a king-sized bed, so there's plenty of room for me, and that he sleeps naked. You can stay here for now, but Amy, you're not living with me. You understand me? I mean, you'll be living here, but you're not like, they'll be getting married next living here. It'll be like, she doesn't have a place to stay living here, okay? Sure, everything's worked out then. You know, it's good to be back. One thing I can say about Undisclosed, you know that it's going to be more interesting than Utah. Nothing interesting happened for the next 4 months. On a blistering late August day, John and I hauled Amy and about a half a dozen cardboard boxes of her possessions down the exit ramp, my Bronco passing a green home of omitted university sign. The school was a little more than 2 hours from Undisclosed, which I had figured was a safe distance should a pit open under the town and swallow it into hell once and for all. Yet close enough that Amy would agree to go. It had taken about 12 arguments and one crying fit to come to that compromise. In the end, I convinced her that she would have to get some kind of education and actually continue her life at some point. See the world, broaden her horizons, get off of my couch, and stop typing on that damned laptop. She was a sheltered kid. She had a shitty time in high school and had barely been outside of the city limits. You don't realize how terrifying the world can be for someone like that, someone who would rather stay in the familiar hole in their unfamiliar mansion. But we finally looked at the college thing and did the research and found her SAT scores were actually good enough to get her a partial scholarship. That and some future crippling student loans that were all it took for her to get out the door. There was a lot of paperwork, and Amy turned into a nervous wreck for the last 3 weeks of her move-in day at the dorms. But here we are. And that's how it should be. She'll be out of my orbit, out of my sphere, and concern, a poor target for anyone and anything that wants to get to me. She'll be safe this time. We unload boxes and waded through the lobby of the dorms. We wound up waiting in line for our elevator along with the crowds of skinny girls and well-dressed parents, chubby boys that looked far too young for the college, and a surprising number of Asian kids. Some guy came along and handed out packets of forms, dorm rules, and shit and struck up a conversation with Amy. She got along so easily with people, so laid back, that she had a light jacket draped over her arm in this 94-degree day. It concealed her missing hand perfectly. They talked and she giggled and he moved on, heading out with his packets. That guy seems nice. Uh-huh. Did you get his name? James or Jack or something? Well-dressed guy. Probably gonna be a doctor or something. What? Yeah, I know. We're at 90. You guys, we're at 94%. All right. Oh, wait. Once we hit 96%, it's an afterwards. It's fine. Shh, shh, shh. You're- Shh. We all die in the end. Shh. Okay. I don't hate epilogues, but it's just because it's not an epilogue specific problem. I just remember, like I was saying at the beginning of the stream, when it's like millions of chapters after the book has theoretically come to its real ending, and then it's just basically setting up the next book. If it's not, just keeps going. You blacked out for a moment. No, it's not over yet. Cool, imp. Calm down. John looked at me and then at Amy and then at me again. He said, he had a nice ass too. Amy turned, rolled her eyes, and we piled into the elevator. We rode up and moved the stuff to our tiny dorm room. And so, for a second time, I said goodbye to Amy. And for the second time, was sure that it was going to be forever. We hugged, and I wished her good fortune about a dozen times. I finally broke off and headed for the hall, sure that I had succeeded, thinking that if you love someone, then you have to set them free, and that I had done just that for a good of all. And just as I was about to be grabbing out of grabbing range, Amy snagged the back of my shirt with a fist and turned me around. She said, "Thank you for helping me move." "You said that already, no problem." John said, "Yeah, dude, it's not a real big deal for me to lift heavy objects. Yeah, you know, I'm sort of used to it, if you know what I mean." I held up a hand to silence him. "John, of course I'm talking about my penis," I said to Amy. "Ignore him. His penis is like everybody else's." Amy said, "I was just going to ask if you've never seen my penis?" bellowed John. "Dude, I'd show it to you right now, to everybody here if we had time." I turned to him. "If we had time, what?" "Because, well, if you want to look at my penis, you'd better have a whole afternoon, buddy. You have to have like 5 or 6 hours to take it all in, lest its majesty escapes you." Before I could stop her, Amy said, "That doesn't make sense at all. It would make sense if you could see it. It would be making long sense, honey." "John, just calm down, okay?" I gestured down the hall. "Go wait by the elevator." He didn't move. From behind me, I heard Amy say, "Do you want to get engaged?" And there it was. I had a sinking feeling, visualized a moth flapping toward a blowtorch, and I tried to think of the best, most soothing way to turn her down and said, "Sure." John looked at his watch. "Well, congratulations. Now we gotta roll. If we leave now, then there'll be enough light to get in some basketball." The day was so hot, it stank. Asphalt baked under our shoes, bodies rustled against one another, dancing to the irregular pat, pat, pat beat of a basketball smacking the pavement. I backed toward the hoop about where the free throw line would be if we had played on an actual court rather than a giant cracked piece of playground sandpaper. And I spun, jumped, threw up a shot that was doomed the moment that it left my fingers. John snatched the rebound, spun, jumped, slammed. He pumped his fist in victory. "Ring it up, buddy! 274 to 137. In John's game, each shot is worth 137 points. If I had a dime for every basket that I had made today, you'd still suck." I tracked down the loose ball and handed it to John. In this game, like life, scoring means that you get to keep the ball. He dribbled twice, glanced over his shoulder, and froze. I saw an expression on his face and turned. John squinted and asked, "Was that there before?" It was a black sphere, floating just over the weeds at the court side, and it was gleaming and about 3 feet wide, looking like a giant hovering 8-ball. John strode over to it, and I heard him say, "You can sort of see into it. I think I see people." He bent over and picked up a broken chunk of concrete. He lobbed it at the sphere, which swallowed it noiselessly. John looked over his shoulder at me and said, "Hold to another dimension, I bet. Want to go through?" After this point, John got the ball and dribbled behind the cracks of bundles of weed, and we pulled the 3-point line. I knew from the look in his eyes that he was going to take the shot. As soon as the ball left his hands, I was bounding toward the rim. That subconscious gauge in the back of my mind already telling me that it was a miss off the backboard. It clanged. I leapt. I scooped the rebound from the ground one-handed, and before John could recover into a defense, I turned and hooked the shot that ripped prettily through a net. Like a drop in the bucket, baby, I said. Splash! Damn, dude, John said, hands on his hips, chest heaving. Your game be chubby today. He said this in much the same way that to say chubby rhymed with today. Tied the 270 tied at 274, Monster Dave. He retrieved the ball from the grass and then heaved the chest pass at me that missed badly. I turned to watch the ball go, and sure enough, saw it hit the black sphere and disappear just like a piece of concrete had. Whoops, John said. I tossed our ball into another dimension, dude. You want to go home? Yeah, let me go and get my ball first. We walked over to the sphere and peered into it. He lifted a leg and stuck it through and then ducked in, and soon it was just his left leg sticking out of the floating ball. He pulled it through and he was gone. I sighed, looked at my watch, and wandered toward the spherical portal. I knew that he wasn't going to come back until I at least poked my head through, so I bent over and pushed my way in. The air on the other side was at least 30 degrees cooler. I stepped out, realizing as I did that I was emerging from a white sphere on the other side, brilliant as sunlit snow. I stepped out onto the basketball court that itself was not terribly different from the one that we had left. But the world was changed nonetheless. The sun was gone. The overcast sky was an unnatural ceiling of tar-flavored cotton candy, and the air had a vague farty smell. I scanned the landscape and saw a small difference. The park in Undiscovered had been polished neighborhood, Victorian houses and carpet lawns. Here, the houses looked empty and forgotten, windows smashed, weeds overgrown, rusted mailboxes. The yellowing white houses nearest to us had a single nonsense word spray painted across the front. Bloodworms. A dry wind blew, bringing with it a vague sulfuric stench once again. I saw John standing nearby, looking up at the rim of one of the half-dozen goals that bordered the court. He said, "You been here? I've been walking around for like 2 hours. Time must move differently here. I came right after you. That's always your excuse. At least it's cooler here. No nets here, though." He was right. The naked rims stood silently over us with very tall, thin, and largely ineffective sentries. He said, "This one's a regulation, but a group of those other goals are bent at the rims. It must be a lot of dunking in this world." There was a tinkering sound from behind us, glass breaking. We both turned. A bone-thin woman dressed in rags stumbled toward us. She had feebly hurled a glass jar at us that crashed 20 feet short of the pavement. Her eyes were swollen in amazement. A bony finger aimed right at us. "Ew!" she screeched. "Unstained! Unstained! How?" Her left arm was missing, ending just above her elbow in a jagged stump, as if it had simply rotted off. Her screaming was suddenly cut short when 4 things that I can only describe as some kind of flying baboons descended on her, beating her savagely with clubs. They hauled her unconscious body into the sky, and we watched them fly away, saw that they weren't coming back for us. We exchanged a look, then shot free throws to see who would start with the ball. John won. We played for a bit, but the game wasn't that much fun. It was the wind. That steady, rotten wind that blew constantly from the south and brought with it a faint sounds of screaming and an insectile shrieking noise. It drove every outside shot off the mark by a couple of inches, and soon we both abandoned 3-point shots, which brought the game under the hoop. That was John's domain. His 3-inch height advantage gave him a series of rebounds and easy layups, quickly giving him a 548-point lead. Sweat stung my eyes as I drove under the hoop once again, trying that little running hook under the baseline. John's hands were quick, swatting the shot away. The ball went bouncing off of the court. Hey, dude! John shouted over after it. Toss it back! I turned to see who he was shouting at. There, by the ball, was hovering what looked vaguely like one of those wet, dry shop vacs they sell at Sears. It had no sound. I could only presume that it was some kind of droid common in this world, though it lacked any kind of eyes or robotic features that we added in our movies to give robots personality. What it did have was a bristling array of probes in front of it that were aimed at two of us, sensors of some kind. I said, that thing doesn't have any kind of ball handling appendages. You're gonna have to go after it. I got it last time. After 5 solid minutes of debate, we decided to go and get it together. At the ball site, we noticed that the droid was still there, taking its silent measurements or whatever. To our surprise, it spoke. Identification, please. John smiled. SE Cocklord, bro. It turned to me and repeated the question. Felipe and Normawang? Identification, not in database. Please state your habitation sector. John. Your ass. Me. The suburbs of west of your ass. Sector not on database. Please report to your nearest quarantine facility. Failure to report within 30 minutes will result in... We walked away and left the thing chattering back there. It was my ball, and I managed to score 2 quick baskets to get myself back to our game. Suddenly, from the sky rose a wobbly mechanical thumping sound like a car running on a flat tire. I looked up at it, and John took the opportunity to steal the ball from my sweat-coated hands. He stepped and hopped and again utilized his genetic ability to dunk a basketball. Booyah, dudes, he said, arms in the air. Dunk off a steal. I done dominated you in 2 universes, biatch. I was sick of basketball. My game had gone as sour as an ominous wind that blew it, and I longed for the courts of my own universe. Also, that distracting pulse sound grew louder. I grabbed the ball and sat down on it, using it as a stool. John said, "Come on, let's get another game in before we have to go back to the hot world. I bet it's not even 70 out there." Nah, I said. I noticed an old-timey brown newspaper on the ground, headlined in a 3-inch tall lettering. Phenomena continues around South Pole. President urges calm. That thrumming, pulsing sound grew louder, and suddenly there was a sharp crack, and we both spun around. Where the shot-back droid had once been was now only a charred spot on the ground and bits of twisted debris. Above and around it were 5 human figures flying slowly toward us on little boots that looked like lecterns. They descended, landing in front of us, undulating clouds of bright blue plasma cushioning the machine as they touched down. All 5 were adult males, clean, wearing sleek black uniforms that looked military. It occurred to me that they were probably even nearby for some time now, but had been hidden by some kind of futury cloaking device like those ships on Star Trek. They stepped off their flying machines and approached us. One guy took the lead, a handsome officer in his 30s, neatly trimmed beard. "Good morning," he said. "I am Sergeant Vance McElroy of the Human Liberation Army. Your appearance here must be quite a surprise to you, but not to us. Prophecy has foretold the coming of strangers from another world since the day of the great corruption. It is an honor to meet you. I confess that I do not know from where you came, but I can tell by looking at you that you have been infected with the..." He talked for what seemed like forever. The wind kicked up again, and I wondered if there was any indoor courts here. I couldn't find a pause long enough to ask the guy. I looked over and saw John giving the man a series of his fake "I'm listening" thoughtfully nods. "And if you cannot defeat him, then all hope of mankind is lost. Gentlemen, the winds of destiny have blown us together. A bright dawn is about to grace this lost and broken world." We hung in awkward silence for a moment, but then I had an idea. Question. That fly-in shop back earlier mentioned a quarantine. I presume they use the old public buildings for this, such as the hospitals and schools, right? So my question is, do any of these converted quarantines still have, like, the gymnasiums intact, or at least, like, the part where the basketball goals are? No, I'm afraid all of the educational institutions were razed at the first siege right before the mass book burnings. Human ignorance has been our greatest weapon, their greatest weapon. But that is not the worst the Dark Ones have done. Often the he drones on, and instantly I regretted asking the questions. I look at my watch and saw the displayed 6669 at the time. I began to accumulate a list of all of the ways this universe sucked. Therefore, only with your unique outworldly genetic makeup can you resist the infection of the yeah, that was very interesting, said John. But to perform this task, your request will need a number of items from our world, so you must allow us to return there and come back to begin our quest. The man nodded. It is good then. We shall await your return. We picked up the ball and ducked back through the dimension rift. We stepped from the black sphere and were glad to be in the sunlight and netted goals. We weren't so happy with the return to the oppressive heat, but decided to deal with it rather than return to the other crappy, dysfunctional universe. We decided on one more game before we could inbound on the ball. A gang of 4 strong-looking, attractive 20-somethings walked up. 2 boys, 1 black, 1 white, 2 girls, 1 Asian, and 1 a pretty blonde. They oozed curiosity upon seeing the portal and exchanged that sound from a distance like a witty comment. The white boy and girl seemed to dislike each other and bickered good-naturedly as they stepped through the portal, a sense of adventure in the air. John rolled his eyes. We had an argument over who had the ball last, but John finally admitted that he was wrong and gave it to me. We played for a bit, but fatigue had set in and we exchanged 2 missed shots each. Then, suddenly, all 4 of the 20-somethings were ejected from the black sphere, and they were covered in dirt and bruises and minor cuts. Look, gushed the Asian girl, it's the same moment when we left. None of that time has passed here. She's right, said the black kid. Yo, I am glad to see the sun. We saved the whole damn world, man. The white boy and girl kissed, apparently having fallen in love during their quest. The boy disengaged, and looked at us with excited eyes. Dude, you guys won't believe what just happened to us. John turned to him. You bored a stranger with your stupid-ass story, and he pulled out his cock and whipped you with it like a stagecoach driver? The kid shut up, baffled. John picked up the ball and bounced it past to me. Your ball. With the last of the survivor plague. As the team made its way through the abandoned village, the priest described the outbreak that had taken every single member of the tribe but him. Painful sores, blindness, madness, limbs that in the course of the minutes seemed to rot and split like bad fruit. Horrors an old man should not have to see in his declining years. The priest had lived to the ripe old age of 37. The priest believed that he had been spared by Kodak, only to relay the tales to me to warn me off. He bid me farewell, saying that he intended to strike out into the jungle, to walk west until he touched the sun, or until the land reclaimed him. I didn't tell him that walking that direction meant that he might wind up as a part of a tour group out in Iquitos. I shook his hand and left Peru for good. A week later, I was in New York, relaxing with Sharon after Dr. Helene's memorial service, enjoying cups of coffee laced with a great deal of brandy. We stood on a balcony looking over the city through clouds of my pipe smoke. Sharon said, "Those poor people, why did they have to die?" And I snorted a few around my pipe. "We all have to, dear." She didn't smile. "You know what I mean, the way that they died, sick and blind and screaming for their gods to save them, with no answer in return." She turned her eyes to me. "The gods are cruel, aren't they, Albie?" I drew a deep breath and replied, "Every living being has but one need, power. Power over other living beings. You need it to grow, to eat, to reproduce, and cruelty is the ultimate expression of power. To impose needless, extreme suffering and humiliation on another, it is the purest demonstration of strength. Toddlers learn it in nursery. Therefore, every organism from the microbe up wears its cruelty as a badge to mark its upward progress. Prey must be subdued. Competition must be starved. Enemies must be wiped out. One would thus assume that we find the same among the gods, only more so." that at each level of the heavens we find higher and higher levels of greed, brutality, and mindless spite. How else could they have become gods? Sharon shivered, though it was not cold on the balcony. In a barely audible voice, she asked, "But is that really the way that it is? The work that you do, you would know better than anyone." I set my pipe aside and turned to let her look into my eyes, and I said, "You survived the bombing." Toasty is always committing terrorism, whether it's terrorism with bombs or terrorism with hugs. Yeah, that's over. That's over. I'm guessing that's the lead into like the next book, albeit those were pages from Dr. Albert Marconi, who was mentioned earlier. But yeah, that was it. It just ends mid-page. So they 19 votes. I feel like that's the most votes that we have ever had. The movie is free on Tubi. I've heard that the movie is about 10% of the book, which I would imagine that much of the movie could not carry the book. Anyway, thank you everybody for hanging out, for reading the book with me, for going through the journey with me. There will be a new book up for vote. I'm trying to decide if I put it up now or later because this is going to be my last stream for 2 weeks because I'm going out of town tomorrow. But I may just put up the vote tomorrow. Thank you everybody for being here, okay? Everybody makes the reading experience better in general, and it's just more fun. Anyways, have a good night, everybody. Have a good weekend. You're all wonderful. Don't die.